Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed panelists, respected guests, and my colleagues. It is my privilege to welcome you all to this panel discussion on rethinking the delimitation, democracy, and federal justice in India. Before we begin, as a mark of respect for our language, land, and cultural identity, may I kindly request everyone to please rise for the Tamil Thai Valtu.
நீராறும் கடலுடுத்த நிலமடந்தை கெழிலொழுகும் சீராறும் மதனமென திகழ்வரத கண்டமிதில் எக்கணமும் அதில் சிறந்த திராவிடனல் திருநாடும் தக்க சிறு பிறை முதலும் தரித்தனரும் திலகமுமே அத்திலக வாசனை போல் அனைத்துலகும் இன்பமுற எத்திசையும் புகழ் மணக்க இருந்த பெரும் தமிழனங்கே தமிழனங்கே உன் சீரிழமை திறம்பியந்து செயல் மறந்து வாழ்த்துதுமே வாழ்த்துதுமே வாழ்த்துதுமே.
Thank you. Please be seated. Delimitation or redrawing of constituency boundaries is a process meant to ensure that every vote carries equal weight. Our last major delimitation was based on the 2001 census, and its outcome has shaped the political landscape we see today. As we look ahead with the current discussion on the number of seats set to be reviewed post 2026 census, the questions surrounding delimitation have once again come to the forefront. How would delimitation this time shift the balance of power between states with varying population growth rates? Will it challenge or reinforce the federal spirit of our constitution? And most importantly, how do we uphold justice, equity, and democratic ideals in this evolving scenario? To help us unpack these complex but significant questions, we are privileged to be joined by a panel of distinguished speakers, experts from the fields of law, governance, policy, and political science, each bringing a unique perspective to the conversation. Alongside these wonderful speakers, we have with us as guests Ms. Harsha Rupartane, Head of Chancery, Sri Lanka Deputy High Commission, Chennai, Mr. K. Saravanakumar, Consul General of Malaysia, Chennai, Mr. Raka Aribak, Consul General, Royal Thai Consulate, Chennai. Thank you for joining us today. At the outset, I'd like to emphasize that this initiative is intended solely for the purpose of exploring and presenting the facts as they are. The objective is only to empower an informed citizenry to engage in enlightened and constructive dialogue. This discussion is strictly apolitical, and I humbly request the audience cooperation to uphold the spirit throughout this event. Today's event consists of two sessions of panel discussions. The first one on socio-economic aspects, and the second one on legal and constitutional dimensions of delimitation. First session, to begin with, I would like to introduce the moderator and the panelists. First session will be moderated by Dr. Devdulal Thakur, Dean of Vinayaka Mission School of Economics and Public Policy. Dr. Thakur is a seasoned public economist. He's an active member of the Indian Econometric Society that brings together thoughts from leaders across India and beyond to think and strategize on the pressing economic issues. He has co authored several impactful reports for global organizations like World Bank, UNICEF, United Nations Development Programme, Asian Development Bank, and more. He has also been nurturing future minds in some of India's most respectful institutions, such as BITS Bilani, National Institute of Public Finance and Policy, and Symbiosis before he joined Vinayaka Mission. As we dive into the complex subject of delimitation, Dr. Thakur's background in public economics and urban systems offer a unique lens to understand how boundaries shape our democracy. May I request Dr. Devnath to kindly take your seat at the stage. Thank you, sir. Our first panelist is Honorable Dr. Elilin Naganathan, Honorable Member of Tamil Nadu State Legislative Assembly from the Thousand Lights constituency. He serves on several key committees such as Chennai Smart City, District Development Coordination and Monitoring Committee, and more. His initiatives such as Suttamana Ayiram Vilakku, a cleanliness drive, a Kannoli Eye and Health Camps, Thousand Lights Ladder Skill Development, and most importantly, Nam Teruvil, Nam MLA, whereby he meets people in person with government officials and listens to their complaints and work towards providing solutions. These reflect his contributions to administrative reforms, urban planning and housing, health, and more. With such wide ranging experience and direct engagement with people, I'm sure he will share valuable insights into how representation can be made more responsive and equitable. Sir, I invite you to please take your seat on the dais. Thank you, sir. Our next panelist is someone who truly wears many hats. Mr. Badri Sheshadri is a social commentator, entrepreneur, and publisher. He's one of the founders of popular sports website ESPN Cricinfo, Kirakku Padipagam, a leading Tamil book publishing house, SynProSoft, a Zoho partner company providing IT solutions. In view of such rich and varied experience, his insights on politics, economics, education, and technology are regularly featured across television. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Badri Sheshadri. Thank you, sir. Our final panelist for the first session is Ms. Kavita Muralidharan, an independent journalist with over 25 years of impactful work. Known for her fearless reporting and deep insight, she has written extensively on politics, culture, human rights, with her work appearing in The Hindu, News Minute, The Wire, Scroll, and Himal South Asian. Beyond journalism, her translated works of Tamil literature, including Amma and Sandalwood Soap and Where God Began, shows her interest in bringing regional voices to wider audiences. With a sharp eye for ground realities and democratic process, I'm sure Ms. Kavita will bring valuable perspectives to today's conversation on delimitation. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Kavita Muralidharan. With all our esteemed panelists now on stage, may I now request the dignitaries to come forward for the felicitation ceremony as a mark of our gratitude and respect for the time, effort, and wisdom our speakers bring to this important dialogue. Firstly, I'd like to request Mr. P.S. Surana, the founder of Surana and Surana International Attorneys, to kindly felicitate Honorable Dr. Elilan Naganathan. Thank you, sir. I now request Mr. Kalyan Jabak, Senior Partner, Surana and Surana, and the Head of Litigation Team, to kindly felicitate Mr. Badri Sheshadri. Thank you, sir. I now request Mr. Surya Senthil, Partner, Surana and Surana, to kindly felicitate Ms. Kavita Muralidharan. Thank you, sir. Once again, sincere thanks to our honored panelists. With that, I now hand over the session to our moderator.
Thanks. So, good evening, everyone, my esteemed panelists and the participants. Let me start with a different note. When I was in class 8, we had Sanskrit, and there we used to learn one poem, and the poem was something like this. Vidvatvancha nripatancha naibatulla kadachana swadese pujjate raja viddana sarvatra pujjate. That means you cannot compare the wise and the king, but the king may be worshipped in his kingdom, but a learned person is worshipped everywhere. So gradually, as I have grown older, I have understood the essence of this particular poem, and I'm continuing to understand that. And I'm thankful to my friend Dr. Vinod that he has also equally realized the meaning of this Sanskrit sloka and has organized, perhaps this is an outcome of that. So today we are here to have a more of an intellectual discourse, what is more of a cross-learning session, because we often talk about certain subjects and we talk about it at a very surface level. So the intention of today's gathering is to understand various perspectives. We might agree to certain perspectives, we might not agree to certain perspectives, but what is important is that each one of the thoughts remains as a perspective, and these are our food for thoughts. So certain floor rules we will try to maintain. We'll try to keep it in a way that it doesn't, any of our words, sentiments, words, paragraphs, language, anything should not hurt the sentiment of anyone, be it in terms of political, be it in terms of religion, be it in terms of caste, gender, anything. It's purely an intellectual discourse. So let us respect that tone and take it forward from there. So, formally starting these session, we have two sessions today. One is the first session, which is basically where we'll discuss the socio-economic aspects of delimitation. And of course, needless to reintroduce once again, we have a panel with various and varied perspectives, and they are the people probably who shares or have some fundamental thoughts in this particular aspect. So this topic of delimitation is very important, but not much discussed. So therefore, as we approach 2026, when there is a constitutional mandate to freeze on the seat reallocation, there is an urgent need to interpret what exactly representation means, what exactly we mean by representation, and that too in a federal democracy. And for India, the issue is a little more complex because we have a three-tier federal structure: the local, the state, and the center. So the question is, do we really measure it merely by numbers, this delimitation exercise, or do we also account for governance, equity, and developmental efforts? Now, let me begin by laying out a quick contrast that frames this evening, which is discussed almost everywhere. As we are sitting in Tamil Nadu, we are part of this state. So let me take the example of this particular state. Tamil Nadu, has a total fertility rate of 1.6. That is on an average, how many childbirth happens for a woman, grossly speaking. And of course, a high literacy and health outcomes. And most importantly, the state contributes around 9% to the gross domestic product of the country, the GDP. The total product that is produced in a country, right? Kind of. And it has 39 member of parliaments. Correct me if I'm wrong. Whereas we have another state, Uttar Pradesh. I'm taking two extremes. Please take it from that perspective. There's neither more nor less to it. Just example. So when you talk about Uttar Pradesh, it has a total fertility rate of 2.9. It contributes around 8% to the GDP, but it has around 80 seats in the Lok Sabha. Right? So I hope you can understand the contrast. You can, because numbers are telling. So what message does this send to states that have invested heavily in human development? And how should we think about fairness in the representation? Right? So that's the whole argument, right? And each side has their own views. So having said this, let me begin with a fundamental dilemma, and I will come to my my panelists, and probably I'll request them to share their thoughts, what exactly they think on this issue, maybe for 1 minute each one, and then we'll move to the other parts. So the fundamental dilemma that I was trying to say, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and others implemented population control with discipline and success. No doubt about it. But will that now reduce their political voice? Right? Because ultimately in this country, all the policies, everything is determined based on the count that you have on the floor, be it in the assembly, be it in the parliament. So with this note, may I request panelist Kavita to share her thoughts, maybe in a minute, what exactly you think on this perspective.
Okay, you started with a Sanskrit poem. I would like to quote two Tamil women poets. I mean, one is Avayar from the Sangam era, and she said these words, which I think is immortal in Tamil literature. She says, "Ethisai sellinum athisai sore." She says this to the king. So the story is this: Avayar goes and to this court of a king called Adiyaman. She lingers there. She's hoping to get some gifts from the king, which is a practice in those days. But Adiyaman, to be fair to him, Adiyaman decides to not to meet her, not to gift her immediately, because he wants her to kind of linger around the court for some more time. She's brilliant, and he wants her to be in the court for some more time. So Adiyaman refuses to meet her. Avaya takes offense, and she doesn't meet the king, but she tells the gods there that I can go anywhere. I have talent, and I can earn my own sustenance. Tell your king that I am not here looking for food. And that's where she says, "Ethisai sellinum athisai sore." And another, Kannagi is, I don't know, Kannagi is a contested character in Tamil literature, but she is also a character who speaks truth to power. She thinks that her husband has been wrongfully killed, and she goes to the king and she kind of protests her husband's death. So we have two very powerful women characters in Tamil literature dating back to 2000 years ago who spoke truth to power. And I think till today we carry that legacy. And all the, what do I say, all the protest against delimitation is not because we are afraid of something, it's basically because we think something is wrong about it. Something is basically wrong about it. So that's why when the state says fair delimitation, all Tamil Nadu wants is not to be punished for its progress. And with that, I think next round I'll take more questions.
Uh, Nice to see all of you here on a Saturday evening. I think it's a very important topic. Uh, Delimitation and population. Population distribution, total fertility rate, all of this, there are two key issues that we are really talking about here. One is the political power and distribution of political power. The other is the fiscal side. What is the kind of distribution of the federal money, the money that central government receives, keeps for itself and devolves to rest of the states. And many times in Tamil Nadu particularly, these things are mixed up. And I want to distinguish between the two. My contention is that the way central government devolves money, it's a very fair model. And we can get into the model at a later point in time. It does follow population, but it also follows a couple of other parameters which ensures that states like Tamil Nadu and Kerala are not affected that much. But on the political side, the freeze of 1970s, if that is changed, let's say in 2026 onwards to 2030s, where states like Uttar Pradesh and Bihar end up getting more seats, it will certainly be inimical to the interests of all the South Indian states, but also to some of the Western Indian states. So it is not just Tamil Nadu, which is going to be at the receiving end. Quite a few other states too, in favor of states like Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. And therefore, a solution has to be found to manage the political power distribution. And we have to delink that from devolution of money that the central government distributes. So we'll talk about it later as and when the opportunity comes. Thank you.
Yeah. Dr. Ezlin?
Hello, friends. You have invited a people representative who have been, experience of facing one state assembly election, as well as experience of electing members to the upper house. We'll get straight to the point. See, there's a study done by the Carnegie Endowment of Peace in 2019, based on 2026 population projections. They gave two scenarios. If there's 543 seats, if there's a number, 4 North Indian states, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, and Uttar Pradesh, collectively gain 31 seats. And 5 southern states, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Telangana, and Andhra Pradesh, lose 26 seats. That's scenario. If we're going to increase the seats to 838, based on 2026 census or 2027 census, UP share will go up to 143 from 80, BR to 79 from 40, Rajasthan from 50 to 25, Madhya Pradesh to 52 from 29. So 4 states gain 150 seats. On the other hand, the relative gain of the South Indian states, namely Tamil Nadu, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, and Karnataka and Kerala, will be only 35. So the numbers are very obvious. I beg to differ with Badri sir from the first stature that it is very much linked with financial devolution too, because the formula given by the 15th Finance Commission, which they take up the population census of 2011, they gave something called a demographic performance equal criteria to adjust the states. But the most important point is, in 15th Finance Commission, is they developed something called the income distance criteria, the income gap criteria. So that on basis, we have a more populous, less economic contributed northern and central states. As very well I concur, not only south, including the western states, well population controlled, greater economic contribution, who are going to be punished by the delimitation. So it has to be done now, because this type of discussions held by this esteemed group of panelists with intellectual mind, because the fear factor is very clear, because regarding the delimitation exercises, we have not got any clear-cut message from the Union Home Ministry stating that what is the mechanism you're going to devise to balance this disparity. That ambiguous nature is there. And second point in the first discussion I want to point out is, when demonetization is announced, what are the stakeholders being consulted? Zero. The committee which stood for one election, one nation, one election, it is done in a very rapid fashion. Suddenly the commission has submitted the report. And discussions regarding various policies, especially in concurrent list, no much of discussions with the respective states have been taken place by this ruling dispensation. With this background of a unitary way of functioning with the union government, it's high time that our delimitation, raising questions for a fair delimitation, has been voiced from a state which has been voicing for federalism, which is one of the basic features of our constitution. So our Honorable Chief Minister was the first one to raise it, called for other states for the joint action committee to raise, and invited many chief ministers to come into the board, so that we'll have a block to address the union government and urge for a fair, honest delimitation.
Yeah, thanks. No, I think taking what Dr. Ezlin has said, long back, our own Professor C. Rangarajan, the former RBI governor, actually made a point that in one of his write-up, that states which control population early may be politically, disadvantaged unless other factors are considered. And what Ezlin sir has said, that 15th Finance Commission flagged this concern, but the constitutional mandates have not evolved to address it. So there are, and the point which he raised about the mechanism is probably the most important question, the most important point that we must think. Now, I have the question that, beyond seats, this question goes to both Azilan sir and Badri sir, and I'll want to have responses from both. Delimitation, could affect the architecture of central grants, something that was just discussed. So I need to have little more discussion on this part. So do you think that high population states might, demand more funds and power, and maybe the development process, the developmental process may be disincentivized? In these, just to recall that when you talk about the 14th Finance Commission, they introduced a performance-based grant for local bodies, but political weight tilt towards number alone. So fiscal reward mechanisms may get undermined. That's a major question or a worry that we have. So maybe I'd like to have a response from Badri sir, and then if Azilan sir can also provide his response.
So my contention is that even though we have a freeze on the delimitation to the 1971 census, the financial devolution has already moved to 2011 census. We are using the population of 2011. In that, Edilan correctly pointed out that the biggest weightage is given to income distance. So around 45% we can look at, which means central government of whatever it is looking to devolve to the states, it gives considerable weightage to states with low per capita income compared to the national average. And naturally, states with very high per capita income, that includes Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Gujarat, and Maharashtra, will get hit. But what is the whole idea of the devolution here? That you want to lift states that are not doing well to a level that they can start doing well, and the parity will be achieved at some point, that the gap starts reducing. So that is something independent of population. It's possible that there is a state with a low population and still low per capita income, and they would also get a high weightage and considerably more grant from the central government. But population finds 15% weightage, which however is almost fully offset with the demographic performance, which is 12.5%. So if you say that the income gap is a very important criteria, I will agree. But if you say population is an important criteria in devolution, that is already offset. So if Uttar Pradesh ranks very high in population, it ranks low in demographic performance, whereas Tamil Nadu will rank very high in demographic performance, but low in population. And net, there isn't much of a difference. That's point number one that I have. Certainly, lifting the states with low income is a goal in this devolution. Second thing, we keep criticizing UP. I would criticize Bihar more than UP. I have taken 4 states for comparison: UP, Bihar, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, for specific reason. UP, despite its low per capita income, around 48,000 rupees, despite its fairly low per capita income of 48,000 rupees, and Bihar is 43,000, Tamil Nadu is 1,75,000, Kerala is 1,60,000. UP is not dependent on the money that is devolved from the central government. That is only one element of it, but UP's own tax revenue, that's state's own tax revenue, is considerable. On the other hand, Bihar and Kerala do not have that high own tax revenue. So it is possible for UP to grow significantly with its own tax revenue, exactly like TN. So I will compare Uttar Pradesh and Tamil Nadu at one level, and I will put Bihar and Kerala, despite Kerala's very high social parameters, at another level. In Kerala's case of state's own tax revenue, it is sort of like Bihar. So we can't simply club all these states together and look at, I'll just give a couple of quick examples and I'll pass on the mic. Uttar Pradesh's total budget last year was 8.08 lakh crores, of which 5.5 lakh crores came from its own tax revenue. The rest through borrowings and central devolution and grants, etc. Tamil Nadu, its total expenditure was 4.12 lakh crores, of which its own state tax revenue is 2.25 lakh crores. So it is not that in case of Tamil Nadu, it has to somehow meet all its activities with own tax revenue and central government gives next to nothing, and that central government pumps UP with lots of money. It does in proportion, but it generates considerable amount of revenue of its own. Right? On the other hand, both Bihar and Kerala, that's not the case. Right? So states have their own path, and what we have to really look at is that population and devolution are not the only measures. The real measure is what are the state's own tax revenues, what is their capital expenditure, how are they looking at increasing their state GDP as they go along, how are they looking at changing the per capita income. I think if we are going to sit here 10 years down the line and look at the per capita income of these four states as an example, and we can pull any other state, you would see that UP would have gone up substantially. Let's forget about who is ruling, etc. Bihar will continue to be languishing if you are looking at this data. TN will grow tremendously, Kerala wouldn't. So let's not club all of them together. Let's look at what kind of economic activity happens there. How are they taking the money that they are getting and how are they investing in that? And will they eventually reach a stage where they are not sitting on handouts and they are generating their own revenue? And there is a lot of scope for that Uttar Pradesh and Tamil Nadu are doing, that Bihar and Kerala are not doing sufficiently, as an example. So this is from a fiscal point of view. When it comes to the political map, we can certainly talk about that. So I consider the current 15th Finance Commission norms reasonable. You can tweak, give instead of 12.5, you can give 15 for demographic performance. Certainly that's fair. Move the population from 15% to 12.5% so that you lean more on the side of Tamil Nadu than on Uttar Pradesh. But the per capita income measure, that's a very fair measure, and that should be the goal. If you're talking about social justice, that is social justice, trying to pull up economically backward states to a level where they are performing along with everybody else. Only thing that you would add is not just on the per capita income, there is certainly a measure on how well they are doing on certain other parameters. So I would certainly reward, again, here, forget about the political side of it. I see Uttar Pradesh doing a lot better on capital expenditure. Therefore, they should be rewarded more because the long-term goal is increasing the per capita income, which Bihar is not doing. Tamil Nadu is doing that well. It should be rewarded. Kerala is not doing, and I'm not saying punished. The carrot should hang for if you are doing these things, you get it, not otherwise.
Yeah, just a observation, Badri sir. See, when you talk about per capita income, what you said is absolutely fine. But per capita income has its limitation. I mean, see, at one point in time, Goa had a highest per capita income in the country. But does that mean that Goa had a huge growth rate kind of thing? Per capita is just an average number. I mean, we as economists, as economist, I'm saying that it's just an average number. It doesn't really talk about the inequality and other things. Between 0 and two people, one has 0 income, one has 100, the per capita is still 50. But does that mean that both the people has equal income? So that may be a misleading thing, but yes, for economics purpose, we
But
do use that.
That's the only measure that is used. Yeah.
Exactly. So the whole point is when we talk about this exercise, how well we can really accommodate other factors. So I would like to take response from Dr. Ezilan.
Basically, Indian Union is a union of states. You should understand the federal polity nature of our functioning. I would quote Dr. Ambedkar very clearly said that this constitution is a federal constitution with federal powers. Only in times of emergencies, calamities, famines, it will act as an unitary structure. Then it reverts back to a federal concept. The loose fitting called pseudo-federalism or quasi-federalism was brought in. That's space in case of only of emergency situation. But the ruling discussion at the union understands the gap in this constitution in order to take extreme steps, deviated steps using this gap to make a unitary state rather than a federal nature. So, for example, here we talked, Vadari sir gave an elaborate discussion on the financial devolution. We should understand there's something called a vertical devolution and horizontal devolution. Vertical devolution, what is the total amount of taxes collects from the state by the center? And the horizontal distribution is by the 15 financial formula, how it distributes among the state. See, so when you see that tax collected from the center, from the states, and you have a union government which completely moves away from divisible pool to non-divisible pool in the form of cess and surcharges. Right? From 2014 till from 2024, the cess and surcharges have surmountably increased. At one side, they said horizontal devolution, that 41% will be given to the state by giving one hand. On the other hand, they're increasing the cess and surcharges by increasing by 10%. Now, by the effective devolution, since I'm the member of State Planning Commission, instead of states getting 41%, it is devolved in actual numbers is just 33%. So the vertical conception by the union without understanding the federal nature, a federal concept, increasing the tax collection in the non-divisible pool, a chunk of 50% and determines. So we are vouching that you want to reduce the divisible pool nature, increasing the cess and surcharges, you see, very question raised from states of Kerala and Tamil Nadu. That's why the actual devolution, suppose if we give 1 rupee discussion, the return back is 29 paise for Tamil Nadu. 1 rupee devolution, return back for Uttar Pradesh is 2 rupees 19. For Bihar, when you give 1 rupee as a devolution, return back is around 7 rupees. The discussion comes on. Coming from the per capita discussion, we give weightage to states like Kerala and Tamil Nadu in the Human Development Index ranking, because these states have invested huge in human development, especially in sectors of health, education. They've done phenomenal strides equivalent to European nations. And that's why these states have converted non-taxable individuals into taxable individuals, because their investment into health and education. When you convert a non-taxable individual into a taxable individual, he pays income tax. The income tax go to the center. We never pay a single pay of income tax to the state directly, right? So the direct tax completely collected by centers because of the investment made in health and education by these states to convert their taxable individuals in non-taxable individuals. Imagine like state like Kerala, which they developed class 1, that is, they created graduates in order to study abroad and work abroad. Kerala is the highest foreign remittance state. The highest number of foreign remittances comes from Kerala, is because Kerala's engagement in health and education when compared to other states. So we should, when you're going to view it in a demographic way, because delimitation is nothing but the demography combined with politics, right? Then we should understand the political community we have evolved. So in order to see an holistic view, then the performance, financial devolution, it's raising up into a political voice right now. You can't decouple it. It is coupled very much. Then state of Kerala, state of Tamil Nadu, if they feel that a particular state wants to employ old pension schemes, if the devolution is proper, based on federal principles, there's no financial crunch of the state to handle its welfare schemes. I'm raising the question to the various political parties who have been in power in Uttar Pradesh and Bihar to see the sorry state of affairs in their gross enrollment ratio, in their vaccination coverage, their primary school, education school, in health indices, the infant mortality rate, the maternal mortality rate, the investment done in an intangible benefit for generations, right? Rather than seeing at the approach. So then the effortful implementation of family planning policy. The union government has given a very condescending policy which got it adapted because of the investment done in health and education, female literacy rate, hospital infrastructure is responsible for effective implementation of family planning policies. Unless the mother is educated to understand the issues of family planning, the progress would not have been made. So we can't keep a segment in an ignorant status and just by the population size and numbers and sustain giving incentives by using the income distance criteria alone, it giving a message that perform or perish. But the message given by the union parameters to various finance commission, perform and perish. So we have to, discussion should be really, really escalated in such a level that, yes, we are very proud about the double engine program the Uttar Pradesh is performing and state tax revenue. But I would see that the oppressed classes of Uttar Pradesh, the social engineering concept of Uttar Pradesh, the human livelihood of people from Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, because as fellow Indian citizens, are they having an access to proper education, health facility, or good education standards when compared to Kerala and Tamil Nadu? So who's going to give that points to that? What type of financial parameter devolution should be given? Take the case of environmental disasters. Badri sir very well know that being a coastal state, Tamil Nadu, we are experiencing extremes of temperature, heat mitigation, cyclones. Kerala is witnessing that because it's a coastal state. What percentage you are giving us in understanding the climatic mitigation efforts? What is the points in that? We are going to a geriatric population now because of the policy of the family planning policy. We are going to handle a very geriatric age group. What percentage of points demographically to consider the aging component? Then the tax efficiency. The GST collections in Tamil Nadu, when compared to Uttar Pradesh, is surmountably high because of the philosophical, anthroponal, law-abiding nature of the particular state of Kerala and Tamil Nadu. So the tax physical efforts should also be given incentives. So when you consider everything in this place, then effective vertical devolution, effective horizontal devolution, proper delimitation should be the talk of the hour.
And that is the beauty of an intellectual discussion. By now, hope we have realized that both these speakers have established their stand. It's very difficult to demark that which one to accept and which one to reject. So that's really that's the beauty of this today's evening. So let me just quickly move to Kavita ji. Kavita ji, I'd like to have your views on certain different perspective. See, we talk of urbanization, and they have a very important role in the voters' landscape. So, how do you see how do this delimitation reflect these in new geographies like the megacities, the peri-urban belts, or the shrinking rural areas? And when we talk about these typical delimitation and these peri-urban areas, etc., we also see that there are a lot of civil society movement that is happening. Um, uh, um, so how do you, what is your perception that what role the civil society should play, or any good examples or best practices that you might cite from here or elsewhere in this particular aspect?
Yeah, urbanization, as far as the urban rural divide is concerned, I think it's very skewed in a country like India. We cities are expanding, they are absorbing huge population migration, and so I agree that there needs to be timely delimitation to represent the voices of the cities. But when you look at the rural uh, regions, just because they have lower population, the needs are also diverse, especially in a state like Tamil Nadu, where the socio-political priorities are different in terms of caste, in terms of access. Just because a population is low in a rural region, if you are going to reject though the aspirations of the rural region or the needs or the priorities of the rural areas, I think it's going to be it's going to kind of deepen the urban rural divide. So if delimitation is based purely on numbers, purely on population, it's definitely going to affect rural areas more. And kind of, it's also, delimitation is also about, it's just like, it's not about pitting one state against another. That shouldn't be the case. It cannot be about pitting cities against villages. So I think representation needs to be fair, it needs to be just and equitable. That should be the entire idea of delimitation. I think that's where we are also going wrong. We don't have, the discussion is about population based delimitation, and we have no clarity. I think Aileen pointed out how there is no clarity, no idea of what kind of methodology is going to be followed, no transparency, and that's why I think the fears around delimitation, especially if it's population basis, are justified. So we need to kind of make sure that the representation is just equitable, even for the rural regions. And as far as civil society, yeah. In Tamil Nadu, the civil society has been very, very active. There are movements like Arapur, which have kind of pushed electoral reforms and also when even otherwise, like even a party like the DMK, I mean, they've been, before they came to power, they protested. So protest is part of uh, our landscape, Tamil landscape. So I think civil society is very vibrant here, and they have a solid role in kind of creating awareness about delimitation and other issues here.
Thanks, Kavita ji. I think when you talk about these aspects, there is a buzz, I would say, because I cannot take a stand being a moderator. So let me say that it's a buzz that states which has actually improved, led the path of progress, are expecting to get penalized in this exercise. Whatever is right or wrong, that time will say. So, and of course, when you talk about this clarity, all these issues, I would agree with you. That's the whole reason that we thought to have this discussion, so that we have our own clarity, we cross-check our clarity. And what me and Dr. Vinod, we agreed that we would prepare a policy brief based on that discussion and the inputs that we gather from today's evening, and place it to the competent people, different scenarios, so that it can act as a guideline, kind of, wherein we have the voices and we talk about certain mechanisms also. So I'll come to that a little later, and I would like to have responses of all three of you on certain proposed mechanisms that you feel that this particular exercise should adopt. Whether it is feasible or not, I mean, whether we agree on this different thing, but what is your perspective? What do you think to be fair and just when you talk about a mechanism for delimitation? But before that, I have a question for Dr. Ezilan. Some states are aging rapidly, and of course others have a youth bulge. So, should this demographic contrast influence the way we think about representation? I mean, some states have a huge youth population, whereas some states are aging very quickly. So, do you think that the delimitation will have some effect on the representation when we talk about these aging factors?
Precisely the position to come and vote is an issue. So bringing geriatric people, asking me as a person who witnessed election, it's really in a very hot sunny day, being seeing cases of heat stroke, making a geriatric people vote is an issue. And actually, there's an option of postal votes, but people have the voting tendency predominantly come to the polling booth. That's one segment. Second, see, we should also say I would align with Badri sir, especially the workforce given by Uttar Pradesh and Bihar to the developed states like us is surmountable. We can't deny the fact the quantum of workforce they're contributing, especially in the informal sector in class 3 and class 4. So their contribution is significant. So that's why states like Tamil Nadu have taken intense steps to provide primary education, food education, even vaccination to all the migrant workers who come from states from Uttar Pradesh and Bihar who work in this particular state. So because we have a geriatric population as well as an aspiring population, and we have a migrant population to take care. I think the system is so a multitude that the ruling disposition, both at the center to state, to consider the aging pattern as well as the migrating pattern in the delimitation process. With that, few suggestions in delimitation is we always look forward for US because it has a 300 and 350 years democratic exercise, right? We are just 70 years old. But for 70 years, we have done good enough when compared to the other democracies. But you see, the administrative reforms and democratic reforms in US started only from 1900s. US has a population freeze based on 1911, if I'm right. So population freeze for elected representatives should be done. Then it challenges or it contradicts the value of one person, one vote value, which was envisaged by our founding father, Dr. Ambedkar, that political value is equal. One person, one vote value. So, for example, if you take my constituency, especially in Thousand Lights, especially in central Madras, there are only 6 constituencies for one parliamentary constituency. But if you take Uttar Pradesh, there'll be around equivalent to 16 constituencies representing one parliamentarian. So justification is it reverses the one person, one vote value. But you should understand apart from one person, one value, we should also understand the constitutional governance also identifies group communities, especially like caste, religion, or regions, or we have a constitutional mandate of linguistic lines. For example, people coming for vote, what do they expect from the member of parliament? What do they expect from the member of state legislator? Or what do they expect from a local body representative? It's an issue. Our voters, especially in well-educated society like Tamil Nadu, expecting a state legislator to solve their local body problems like sewage lines, putting roads, putting lights. It should be the purview of the local bodies. But the expectation of the people is they need the MLA to do so, or they need an MP to do so. Right? The purpose of you voting to an MLA is so that we represent your voice in the discussions of the state assembly to discuss various legislation brought by the state assembly regarding the policy of the state, economic policies of the state, education policies of the state. This discussion, we have to participate in the legislation. Or as a ruling party disposition, we are elected to form the cabinet to elect a chief minister of the state. My roles are very defined in state legislature, but the expectation of the people, they want me to work like a counselor, right? Imagine you're going to select a member of parliament. Around 6 lakh people are voting for one member of parliament. Do you want my member of parliament to sort out the sewage issue in one of my streets? Or you want my member of parliament to debate the discussions of various deliberations, all the laws being, acts being enacted in the parliament, debates around it, and to frame the policies of the country, external affairs policy, discussions on budget? So our people, especially we the people, should understand our vote is being for what purpose. So now, if you are able to have a clear-cut understanding, now I'm going to give one more option, right? So if one man, one vote value is very, very significant for a local body, state legislature, I accept. But that this value gets translated into the parliament. That we have to answer. So the parliament should have equal number of member of parliament seats, free equally number for all the states. The legislature seats can be increased. Uttar Pradesh can have much more bigger assemblies. Madhya Pradesh can have bigger assemblies based on the population criteria. The local bodies can have increased numbers based on population criteria because they are the ones who are near to the people. They are the ones who serve the people. But I need a parliamentarian to voice on the overall policies of Tamil Nadu or overall policies of the Kerala in the parliament house. So the house of the people in the parliament should have equal numbers. Tamil Nadu should have equal numbers. Kashmir should have equal numbers. Manipur should have equal numbers. Then you think issues like Kashmir and Manipur will be sidelined. They'll be discussed if you have equal numbers, right? Just 3 states or 4 states majority can't determine the course of the country, right? They can't determine the language what country should speak. Can't determine what type of policy of education to be done. Can't determine the taxation to be implemented. The discussion will become very, very renounced. The outcomes will be very, very valid if equally all the states are represented equally, irrespective of the population in the parliament. You increase surmountably the numbers based on population criteria for state legislatures within the boundaries of the state to serve the people. You increase surmountably the number based on population criteria for the local bodies. But in case of the union, when we have equal representation for all the states, whether it's small or big, or whether it's linguistically majority or not, then actual federalism will start functioning in this country. That's my thought.
Thanks, Dr. Rezilan. You know why I asked this question? Because in economics there is a dilemma that we always try to ensure equity and efficiency. Just in a very fellowman's language, if I have to explain efficiency, it means you have a cake. So efficiency means everyone has a part of the cake. Equity means everyone has an equal share of the cake. So the dilemma is between this equity and efficiency. So, in Japan, due to this acute aging issue, there are constituencies where there are one voter out of 900 residents. So there are cases. I mean, so when you talk about just the numbers and population, this aging factor is an equal factor, important factor when we talk about delimitation and we talk about representation. Now, coming to the last phase of this round, I have some thought I will share with the floor, and I'll take responses from all 3 panelists. See, in India, the Niti Aayog talks about, not only the Niti Aayog, the UN also proposes the multidimensional poverty index. So when you talk about certain things, we take into account a lot of factors, not only do you think that when you talk about these delimitation exercise, maybe the factors like HDI, education, health, other factors which really reflects those social issues, those issues which directly affect the life and livelihood of people? Because these days it is not the case that the mix, and it is very wrong to say that people who live in the urban areas aren't much, or they do not have something called poverty. The notions of urban poverty, etc., are very much prominent these days. So just banking on population alone and going ahead with the delimitation exercise, rather than we accommodate those other factors like HDI and all these things, similar to the multidimensional poverty index, how we have done that, how we have ranked that. So this is just a thought. So based on this, I'd like your response, how you see or how you think that the mechanism for delimitation can be, if you were, for example, the planner, the policy planner who is supposed to uh, pronounce the delimitation exercise, what mechanism would you have adopted or you have suggested? So I'll first start with Kavita, then Badri sir, and then Dr. Ezilan.
Okay, one thing I really wanted to say is Tamil Nadu did not stumble into this growth. It was carefully planned. We had an IAS officer called TV Anthony who drove this family planning initiative. So his moniker became tubectomy, vasectomy Anthony. So these were the things that it was very planned and it was very systematic because Tamil Nadu wanted to kind of deliver on the national policy goals. So to be punished, if delimitation, if you assume, right now I think it's going to be based on population. So
No, Kavita, I think I agree. I mean, what you said, that the major dilemma, probably all my panelists and participants will agree that the whole debate is lying around the fact that states which has actually followed the national agenda,
yeah.
performed on the national agenda, they are feeling that they are being penalized.
Yes.
So then how do you reconcile this? And if you were the planner, how would you have responded?
I also agree that many other factors. So across the world, I think it's emerging to kind of look into nuanced governance, to not look into the number of people living in a region, but how they live. That should be kind of given importance. So maybe this multidimensional poverty index or national or human development index, these factors should be taken into account. As also, like in Tamil Nadu, we have great maternal mortality rates or gender equity. So these things also, I think we need to speak about sustainable development goals. So if you need to I think a proper government should be incentivized for kind of keeping up with national goals and not punished. The idea of delimitation should be around incentivizing and not punishing. So maybe take into account not just population but other factors, other development factors, and see how you can bring it about. So that should happen, but that's not happening. You can't go about numbers alone. You can't. Democracy is not about arithmetic. It's much more than that. It's about the lived realities of people, and that should be taken into account when you propose something as large as this.
Yeah, Badri sir, I just want to add on question. What was proposed was that the states which feel like losing seats will be compensated the Rajya Sabha numbers in Rajya Sabha. But the whole idea of Rajya Sabha and the Lok Sabha are different.
They're different.
So that I
So-
just thought to add this.
2 or 3 ways in which we can address this. One is to simply retain the 1971-1975 number forever. Why push it by 25 years, and then leave it hanging and then fight about it? So that's one model. This is it. For the last 50 years, nobody even raised any issue about it. I have not seen Uttar Pradesh demanding more seats. They have never really asked for it. So to bring it up now makes no sense. Okay, so you can just solve all the problems by saying, further amendment, which indefinitely, maybe if you are a little worried about indefinite, maybe say next 100 years and leave it to somebody else to deal with it 100 years down the line. That's one. Second, I actually like Edilin's idea of equal representation where we have a clear model, US is a model, but it is a combination. It's not simple equal representation. You have Senate where everybody gets 2 seats. And over time, Senate's power has increased. And House of Representatives, which has got some key powers, particularly on the budgeting side of it, that's based on population. So it is possible for us to consider, and that is significant change from Ambedkar's constitution. If you are okay for that, we could consider that, where the lower house is population based with some caveats, again not completely population based, but sort of reflecting the population in a sense, and the upper house is equal. 2 seats for Manipur, 2 seats for Tamil Nadu, 2 seats for Uttar Pradesh. 2 is a number. You could have 3, you could have 5, and enough powers where issues cannot be ignored. And certain key bills, particularly including finance bill, etc., has to be passed in both the places. So you cannot divert, just pass it in one place and finish it off. But that is like rewriting the constitution. Are we ready for it? Because any attempt to even talk about it will be seen as some way in which those in power, will be accused of trying to hijack everything. So that's a challenge there. But there's a lot of merit there, and we should consider that at least as a debate. We should consider that. The second, this punishment repeatedly comes primarily from the devolution of financial grants and fiscal side. There is a lot of fairness that we can bring in there by tweaking the formula, while giving reasonable weightage for uh, poorer states to be given some grants to improve their performance, but against milestones, not randomly, like you get 20,000 crores, go and do whatever you want, but like 20,000 crores over a 5-year period if you complete this milestone, etc. Whether it will be followed properly or whether there will be a roundabout way, I don't know, but at least it can be brought in. That is one thing that can be done. The second thing is to increase the state's own tax revenue. Now, GST by itself is not wrong. I'm quite okay with it. And some of the states are doing well. I mean, I want to only add one point in that we somehow hyphenate, like how we are so angry about India, Pakistan being hyphenated. UP, Bihar, and TN Kerala should not be hyphenated, just on performance. I'm just taking April 2025 GST data. Kerala's population is roughly half, a little less than half, but close enough to half. Tamil Nadu's GST collection is 13,800 crores. Kerala's is 3,400 crores, like 1/4. Half the population roughly, but 1/4. Bihar, 2,290 crores. Uttar Pradesh's population is twice that of Bihar, but 6 times GST collection, 13,600 crores. So these are states which are performing very differently. Tamil Nadu is performing way beyond in terms of self-sufficiency or going towards that. That's what UP is doing with respect to Bihar. They are, at a certain lower level of per capita, another at a higher level. Now, how do we help improve their own tax collection is very important. If it means you have to, I agree, you can easily, and a willing government, it could be BJP, it could be somebody, remove cess, remove surcharges, push it into the general bucket, and then share, there will be more fairness. Go further, the point he mentioned, we are creating taxable population, but we are not getting the income tax except under devolution. Again, look at US as a model. These are easy enough amendments, and he knows better, and I don't know. I'm not in the assembly or parliament. It's doable. You say that of the direct tax revenue, there is a state component. Like in GST, we have equal, but in a direct tax, You don't have to make it equal. Let's say that 10 or 15% of all direct tax collected in that state goes directly to the state. 10 is a number, you just work out. The remaining goes to the divisible pool and then you slash it whichever way. They will add fairness, and a state like Tamil Nadu and or Maharashtra and Gujarat can very well say, hey, we are doing, we are happy that our taxation has actually gone up and we can do wonders with it. And it's a sort of a lesson for other states that if we put a lot of effort into increasing the direct tax in our state, we get more money to spend on whatever it is that we want. It could be hospitals, it could be roads. That's up to you, your decision. But these are all good measures that can easily be brought in and not even linked to delimitation, right? So federal ideas when it comes to money, they are very much required. And it is good for all of us. And these are not cosmetics. They're true changes which will dramatically improve center-state relationship, whoever is in power, right? So I'm certainly all for it. But still, when it comes to the pool of money that central government devolves to the states, they will have to follow the income gap, the income distance that is, and the population in some sense, and throw a lot of carrots, not stick. So we don't want to use the word of punishment, which is repeatedly used. Maybe more incentives can be given, which I'm agreeing to the points that she talked about. You're doing well in development index, we'll give you more money. So there is a pool of money that is created only for that. Hit these parameters, take this money. You don't, goes into, rolls over into the next year. So all of this is doable today. And people like Erilan and his party can certainly propose these ideas. Now, one last point, which I'll stop. Usually the government sets up the delimitation commission, which is headed by a, retired Supreme Court judge, and there are then election commission and others commissioners part of that, and they come up with the model by which the delimitation happens. Now, it's possible for the parliament to come together. A parliamentary committee comes up with broad principles and pass it on as a reference, saying, we have a stake in this. We think altogether that these are all fair points. We are presenting this to you. Use this as a sort of basis and then build on it, rather than wait for them to come back, who can probably be, they may be, they're not supposed to report to the ruling government dispensation, but there could be some, indirect directives, etc. So you can avoid that by making it a parliament-driven process. The terms of references are clear, that we don't have to actually worry about it. Now, outside of delimitation, whenever it happens or doesn't happen at all, is also fine with me. We can look at a lot of fiscal reforms and the devolution of money to all the states so that everybody is happy about that. Thank you.
My closing notes is very simple. Now, let us assume the various utopian ideas being discussed here in our panel. We have a ruling dispensation with a very clear-cut timeline. 2021 census has been postponed in the name of COVID. So it has been pushed to 2026 to 2027 because the then NDA government, Vajpayee government, brought this amendment to freeze the population criteria. Its time is going to be expiring exactly at 2026. So now the government says we are going to do a census on 2027. Why 2027? Because the timeline for the population freeze is going to end at 2026. So I do a delimitation based on my census on 2027. Then I have faced the election in 2029. I need to win just 4 states to capture power. So what is the very clear-cut timeline has been there. Here we have a utopian discussion about federal politics, changing criteria in our finance commission. The recent statement given by the 16th Finance Commission, Panegara, is very disappointing. As if the mark is, there's not going to be much of change. Whatever suggestions made by Badri sir has been given as a state government response, taking criteria for incentivize development, addressing climatic mitigation efforts, addressing geriatric population by the official state government release to the 16th Finance Commission. Our job is done. But how far the union government, finance commission chairman is able to incorporate this recommendation is a question. But the recent statement released by the finance commission chairman is disappointing that there won't be much of change. Now I have a union government who's determining what type of vaccine should be given in Dharmaburi district, sitting in Delhi. What type of primary health centers should be opened in Virudhunagar districts, because they are completely moving away the concurrent list into the union list. With such a mood hanging at the center, hope our panel discussions make a concrete inroads into the political houses of our country. Thank you.
Thanks to all the panelists. We'll open the floor for some quick questions.
I think due to time restrictions, we'll take 3 questions from the audience. The remaining questions will be taken offline. Please raise your hand if you have a question. Introduce yourself briefly and keep your question precise.
My name is Chora Natchiyar Rajshekar, President TCC. This is regarding in democracy, majority is democracy actually. When one vote comes, the government may go or come inside. The real fear and doubt about this delimitation issue is of southern states. 4 states have minor numbers and the majority of on north side having higher number. So to circumvent, to capture the power, this will be utilized. This is the fear and doubt in the southern states. And also, as the speakers expressed that, in our country, it is a peculiar situation, not like USA. Language, culture, and social differences are there all over the city with multiple languages. So devolution of powers, decentralization of power should be the essential model of democracy, not to centralize it. And one more thing is also the digitalization and technology can improve the representation of people, more than crores, several crores. For the past, we also noticed in several other departments as it need not to require more number of representative, because the technology can provide more and more constituency. If you have 6 crores, 2 crores, 3 crores population, it may well represented the issues and solution by using technology instead of going for more representation of MPs. So the democracy should be devolution of power. Then real fear is the southern states will be neglected. That is the reason.
Thank you. Any questions in particular? Thank you for the observation, sir. Any questions from the floor? Okay. Yeah.
I am Surya Sendil, advocate and partner here. I have a question to Dr. Redilan and also to Dr. Batri also. Sir, yes, what you said makes sense. We need more representation in the parliament also, because that should be proportional to the population. However, the power equation should not be diminished. So the best solution is that you keep the Lok Sabha according to the population and keep the Rajya Sabha fixed numbers, so that the proportional representation, the power equation doesn't go, because as per even the existing constitution, the upper house, the bills have to be passed. assuming that the money, it is not passed as a money bill. Otherwise, the upper house has to pass. So there will be majority in the upper house. Not even the existing setup, the real democratic setup, it will go. But will that also, now I'll come to that question, like you have said earlier, even we had earlier one country, one nation, one debate we had, where former Chief Election Commissioner, Mr. Gopal Swami also came. He said exactly the same thing. The people do not themselves know that what is the purpose for which we vote for this person. They go to the MP who is for a larger representation, for bigger issues. They say that water is not coming, my sanitation is not there, and to the MLA. And he says to that extent, that is the reason precisely why even every member of the parliament has been given some money allocation. And same for the MLAs also. But he says that the slowly how we can do is, one way is that you go for one country at election and for all these places in the same time. Not only the money will be saved, the people will also know for what purpose I'm voting for him, what purpose I'm voting for him, and what purpose I'm voting for him. What is the take on that?
Our people, 3 elections at one time,
One
able to
time.
differentiate MP, MLA, and local
At least
bodies.
they know same time they're voting, so that vote goes to different purposes.
So then I'll have an election campaign run by my vehicle, where my local body says, "Ma, the street light drainage problem will be solved." Then I'll be sitting in the utter platform saying that the state legislature and one more MP will be standing discussing the policies. I think precisely we are muddling 2 issues here together. See, one election, one time, because of the output of doing differential elections or the same elections, because of the different trajectories, or because of the political reasons of misuse of Article 356. Every state has a different timeline right now. That's the main reason.
Yes.
It's not with the state, it's not with the people. It's again brutal misuse of power of Article 356 is responsible for different time frame line. The only issue with one nation, one election is it curbs the right of a state government to determine the time of legislation. No one is talking about that. If Chandrababu Naidu wants to predate the election, he decides. If our particular chief minister wants to predate an election, the particular legislation determined by the chief minister. But in one nation, one election, that power is removed from the state legislation. So it has been determined by one fixed time frame to be aligned everyone. So that has to come with different deliberations, more wider discussion has to be placed. But whether it will solve by doing an election one time to understand the voter is a challenge. I think this is where civil society groups to come and orient our people about the local bodies, about the state legislation election, and our parliamentary election, rather than framing up all the 3 elections one point of time. For example, to understand the essence of democracy, I think active participation of various civil society groups should come into play.
Yes.
I would like a lot of educated people, especially in Tamil Nadu, poverty is just less than 2%. What is the representation of middle class and lower middle class in state legislature, in local bodies? Are they willing to align with each and every political party views and do grassroots activism from behind and come up? You know what is the polling percentage of state legislature in my constituency? An assembly election is 57%. It's just 57%. For MP election, it is only 49 and 51%. Where's the rest 30% going on? All the ECR resorts are full during the election day. People think it's an holiday, right?
So sensitization is needed.
Yeah. So if you make those type of orientation have to begin, if we want responsible, vibrant democracy to take place, first make voting compulsory. What makes 100% voting compulsory? Unless we make it voting compulsory, it is very easy for me to work for certain pockets and win an election. Why do I need to bother for people who never come to vote? So when that will happen? When there's an active engagement of people coming to the polling booth station, right? So when that comes into place, then the discussion is the difference of voting pattern of whether the local body importance, state importance, or parliament election will make. If you make it 3 in the same model, they'll move. it again, it in fact augments the problem rather than solving it.
Unless it's not done properly. That is what.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for the response.
So, thanks. The best part of this session is I have, just sharing one personal experience. I have stopped watching television debates. Uh, when today I was moderating this, I was wondering that how this makes a difference when we sit in the television room, we fight with each other, and when we are here, we had a very fruitful and organized debate and discussion, each having their own issues, perspectives. They have agreed, they have disagreed, but maintain the decorum of the floor. And we came up with certain very important points which will help us to write the policy brief that we are planning to write. And we okay, so that's another very good observation. So nonetheless, we will try to move to the next session. In between, we have a break. No? Okay, fine. So we'll move to the next session. And thanks to all the esteemed panelists, Kavita ji, Badri ji, and Dr. Rezilan. It was really nice sharing the platform with all of you. And moving forward to the next session, I hope that will be equally engaging.
Thank you, panelists. Thank you, panelists. We now move to the second round of panel discussion, where we will continue to explore this idea, but from new perspectives. This session will be focusing on legal and constitutional dimensions of delimitation. This session will be moderated by Dr. Vinod Surana, the managing partner and CEO of Surana and Surana International Attorneys. He's a lawyer, mediator, trained family business advisor, academician, and many more. He conceptualized, advocated, and was instrumental in bringing the defense corridor to Tamil Nadu in 2018. I'm pleased to invite Dr. Vinod Surana to the stage. It is my honor to introduce Mr. N. Ram, Director of THE Publishing Private Limited, the publishing arm of Hindu Group. He's a distinguished figure in the Indian journalism since 1966. His extensive journalistic work covers Indian politics, foreign and nuclear policy, Sri Lankan ethnic conflict, freedom of expression, and vital role of media in democracy. Given his profound perception, I'm sure Mr. Ram will provide valuable perspectives on delimitation. May I invite you to kindly take a seat on the dais, sir. Thank you, sir. Our next panelist is Dr. Alok Prasanna Kumar, co-founder of Vidhi Center for Legal Policy. His research covers judicial reforms, constitutional law, urban development, law, and technology. His work is featured in Hindu, Indian Express, Scroll, and top legal journals. Having practiced at the Supreme Court of India and the Delhi High Court under Mr. Mohan Parasaran, Dr. Kumar brings a deep understanding of law in practice. His wide knowledge of constitutional law and urban issues offers critical insight into delimitation. We request you, sir, to kindly take your place on the stage. Joining them is Dr. Nandakishore, head of the Department of Politics and International Studies at Pondicherry University. He has been teaching significant concepts such as geopolitics of West Asia, India's foreign policy, concept of war and peace in geopolitics. Dr. Kishore's recent book, Reimagining India in Geopolitics of the 21st Century, has been widely appreciated for its bold and timely analysis of India's place in the world. Beyond academics, he is a much sought after speaker. Remarkably, he is fluent in 7 languages, a reflection of his deep engagement with India's cultural and regional diversity. I'm sure that sensitivity to language, identity, and inclusion would bring a valuable perspective to today's discussion. May I request you, sir, to please take a seat on the stage. Thank you, sir. With all our panelists now on the stage, may I now request the dignitaries to kindly come forward for the felicitation ceremony, starting with Mr. Sanjay Mehta, Senior Partner and Head of Real Estate Infrastructure and Corporate Practice, to kindly felicitate Mr. N. Ram. Thank you, sir. I now request Mr. Preetham Surana, Partner and Head of Academic Initiatives, Surana and Surana, to kindly felicitate Dr. Alok Prasanna. Thank you, sir. I now invite Mr. Sandeep Surana, Head of Surana and Surana, to kindly felicitate Dr. Nandakishore. Thank you, sir. Thank you, panelists, for your presence today. I now hand over the session to our moderator.
Thank you, Niranjana. We are behind schedule, so I will not go much into the background. We had a phenomenal first session. We got very interesting insights. So we'll go straight into the legal and constitutional dimensions. We have Mr. Alok Prasanna, the co-founder of the Vidhi Center for Legal Policy, an acknowledged expert in policy. Mr. N. Ram, a legendary figure, not only a journalist, but he has deep insights into various aspects of Indian society, which we very highly value, sir. And we have Dr. Nanda Kishore, the head of Politics and International Studies at Pondicherry University, also known in the policy circles. So we have a very fine panel here. Delimitation, as the word says, is to fix territorial boundaries. It is meant to give effect to the constitutional promise of equal representation, ensuring every vote has equal weight. However, over time, the legal and constitutional architecture has evolved in a way that challenges the balance between democratic equality, federal justice, and political pragmatism as we know today. So I will start straight away. I will dive into the subject. When we speak of delimitation, the constitutional provisions which deal with delimitation are Article 81 and 82. 81 deals with the composition of the Lok Sabha, the House of the People. It says that they must be chosen by direct election. The ratio of seats to population must be the same for all states as far as practical. Ratio between the seats within the state must be same as far as possible. The population to be taken for delimitation is the population of the previous census published. The first delimitation was supposed to happen in 1971. Through a couple of amendments, it was pushed, and now the current date is 2026. As law students, we have all learned that originally law started as, or it was defined as, the command of the sovereign. Thereafter, it evolved to say that law is a codification of social norms. Thereafter, they said law is an instrument of social change. So in this background, when we are looking at delimitation, which should have originally happened in 1971, the question I have is, should India rethink the very idea of representation to move from arithmetic-based seat count to a strategic blend of various factors which include population, land area, state gross domestic product, socio-economic factors such as performance, contribution, culture, etc. So I will start with Alok. I would like him to speak about the constitutional provisions. Is it possible? It is a realm of possibilities, and then I will move to the other panelists.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Vinod. Let me start by saying something that, it was on my mind when I'm thinking about delimitation. It's not about arithmetic. It's not even about federalism. I want to frame this debate essentially as a debate about democracy and fraternity. I'm not using the word versus. Versus means that they're opposing values. They're not opposing values. Our constitution and our preamble puts all these values together and says the way India has to be governed is through all these values. You don't choose one and say this is better or that is worse. And at the heart of it, and these words are in our preamble, is the dignity of the individual. The idea of one person, one vote comes from the fundamental idea that every individual has value. In fact, even our Constituent Assembly, people said, why do we need universal suffrage for India? I mean, we look at these people, only 10% of them are literate. What will they know about voting? They won't know anything. But our founding fathers and mothers said no. In fact, they were ridiculed around the world. People said, look at this country trying to do universal suffrage with 10% literacy, it won't last 10 years. And we proved them wrong. We've said that the average Indian man or woman is perfectly capable of understanding how power works, how governance works, knows the value of his or her vote. And it doesn't matter if they're in the bustling metropolis of Chennai or Bangalore or Delhi, or whether in a remote hamlet somewhere in Bihar or Uttar Pradesh, they know the value of their vote. So I think when we start reducing democracy to arithmetic or numbers, we start taking away a very core fundamental idea of our constitution. And that idea is not democracy or federalism. That idea is the dignity of the individual. So our constitution being built on this idea, we cannot do away with it. We have to give one person, one vote, and one value. Is there only one way to do it? No. There are multiple ways to do it. And I will cite the work of my colleagues at Vidhi, who have given about 5 or 6 ways which it can be done within our constitutional framework. I'm not going to spend too much time on that in this particular part of the discussion. But what I want to do is leave you all with the thought that what we are discussing is how do we have a country which values democracy and fraternity. Because democracy, of course, says that every person should have one vote, one value. But fraternity also means that we recognize the inherent differences among ourselves and not assume that anyone is superior to the other. And at the core of this is the idea of the dignity of the individual. So let's reframe this debate a little bit. Instead of putting a versus, let's put an and.
Mr. Ram, your views on that? Your views on should it be one person, one vote? Is there a better way of doing it?
I think this business of one person, which really means one citizen, one vote, one value, it comes from Dr. Ambedkar's last address to the Constituent Assembly on November 25th, before the Constitution was adopted, has been made much of. I think what he meant really was, it was in terms of social justice. And although the constitutional provision is pretty clear on how seats should be allocated, divided in the for the Lok Sabha among the states, there's no need to mix this up. One, mechanically to say that one vote, one value, meaning a certain demographic equality. That's my point. Now, the real political issue here is promoting and achieving all-round development and pursuing population control by whatever name called are stated key policy and governance objectives of every government from the time we had independent, free government, elected governments. So given this, are states that do well, it's been talked about. This is part of the campaign in the South, going to be penalized for their success. So contrary to what delimitation policy assumed, the performance gap in terms of achieving all-round development and bringing down the population growth rate, I think these two are organically tied together. This has widened. And there's a paper published in I can give you the citation, in the Economic and Political Weekly, published recently. It's called Comparative Macroeconomic Performance and Human Development of India's States. Does Convergence Remain Elusive? By Suchimita Bose and Somnath Chattopadhyay. They clearly say that convergence is not happening. And if it happens on the macroeconomic front, it's not happening on the human development indicators, and they have their own prescriptions and so on. But the point here is convergence is not happening. The gap is not narrowing, and it's well known that the southern states and also western states are far ahead of many of the Hindi-speaking states. Apart from the details that were quite interesting in the last session, there are surprises, don't overgeneralize, etc. The picture is pretty clear. And I would like to cite this book by Demography, it's titled Demography, Representation and Delimitation, The North-South Divide in India, written by Ravi K. Mishra, a historian who is currently Deputy Director in the Prime Minister's Museum for Prime Ministers, used to be called Jawaharlal Nehru Museum and Library, anyway, in Tinmurti, where there's data it's worth looking at. I won't be dismissive, but he argues vehemently in favor of doing literally what the constitutional provisions demand. And his point is that demographic transition took place over a long period, specifically from 1881 to now. And the southern states had their great time of high population growth and so on. And it's very little to do with population control policies. That's, I think, that seems to fly in the face of all the data, everything that we know, and so on. This is the other side presented with a fairly militant demand that don't freeze the status quo, and so on. But I think Article 80 and also 170 use the term as far as practicable. The solution was there already in 1976, whatever context that was. But again, more interestingly, in 2001, that frees it again. If you want to raise the number of seats in the Lok Sabha to 800 and something, 848, by all means do it, provided there's no physical, it's under the physical limit of being able to conduct the House meaningfully. But keep the existing ratio of seats if you want to raise it. There's another key issue here for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. It is clear that their share in the population has increased. And I think a separate provision has to be made for that in the interest of social justice. Since this matter is not justiciable, we need not look over us. If I'm not mistaken, the lawyers can correct it. We need not look over our shoulder at what the Supreme Court may want on this matter if somebody goes before it by way of challenge. So I think the only feasible solution is, if you don't, it may be too much to just freeze the existing number. So increase it by all means if you can accommodate them in this new house, new parliament, but keep the existing ratio, and that will solve the issue. One of the arguments by Dr. Mishra is that MP lad scheme, only 5 crore rupees a year. In the south, you can do a lot with it. In the north, its value is not very much because it's spread thin. I have no objection to your looking at that separately and increasing it for according to states in a realistic and reasonable way. But that's nothing to do with delimitation. So don't bring in all kinds of irrelevant or trivial issues into the argument. The point is, do you penalize states for doing better? And as the note that you sent, that was sent to me earlier, the background note points out, there are other constitutional values which also have to be taken into account in calculating delimitation, like constitutional morality, federalism or quasi-federalism, social justice, and welfare. States that do well have lived up to that the constitutional imperative, whether it's in the directive principles of state policy or in the preamble to the Constitution, that is relevant. So that's my solution. And the government has not shown its hand yet. I think it can be criticized severely for delaying the census of what should have been held in 2021. Maybe the pandemic meant a delay, but certainly it could have been held in time so that the next, you can put off the problem till 2031. It didn't do it for me, obviously political reasons, but it's not shown its hand yet. The Home Minister, Union Home Minister has said per capita, the states won't lose anything. Per capita in relation to what? Population or the existing number of seats. So they have to make that clear. I think I don't think they've decided it yet.
Sorry, just what I was saying, the Constitution already does this to a certain extent of saying how democracy and fraternity can go together in the context of small states. So states which have a population of less than 6 million are existing one person, one vote, one value, slightly tweaked, so that they are not deprived entirely of representation. So you don't merge a Goa into Maharashtra, or you don't merge a Sikkim into West Bengal. You say these are states with a particular history and a particular demography and a particular this thing, and you say they will be little bit overrepresented. right? It's not as if they're getting as many seats as Maharashtra or as West Bengal, but they will be little more overrepresented in the interest of fraternity.
Just one final, the caveat, as far as practicable, can be stretched to its maximum limit to accommodate all these factors or objectives.
Dr. Nandan.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me here. At the outset, I think Constitution has to work based on continuity and change. And Constitution also has to be a living document. Article 82 of the Constitution says readjustment after every census. Now, the problem here is a lot of assumptions essentially based on ideological grounds. Had it been done periodically, now we have become selective that it wasn't done in 84th Amendment of the Constitution. So, but we've forgotten that it wasn't, it was also brought up in the 42nd Amendment of the Constitution. Now, whenever we introduce anything for the first time, or let's say after a gap, naturally there will be a resistance. That's where I was talking about continuity and change. If something is, let's say, even a disciplinary action, when it is done continuously, people just get used to it. Now, the problem here is multifolded. One, because of an apprehension that there's an union government with a different ideology, and we are not comfortable with it. Secondly, we also seem to be quoting certain precedents associated with, let me give an example. In the previous session, it was spoken about that, let's say, one nation and one election about, or the way some of the bills were passed and everything. There was an issue that was brought up on the procedures. Let's say, because Constitution works on, or let's say the democracy itself is a procedural democracy. But debates and discussions has to be fair, where the people have to be educated on all the things. When it comes to the salaries of the public representatives, there seems to be no debate or discussion. Nobody speaks about the procedures of democracy. But when it comes to these issues, those also matter. There's public money. When it comes to other issues, there seems to be an idea that there are not enough deliberations and others are happening. I can understand because of the precedences, because we can quote number of things. Facts have to be facts. Keeping that in mind, what I see is the two interventions in the past where 42nd and the 84th Amendment to the Constitution, where they halted it and have taken it forward without conducting it, has given a new precedence here in the era of different type of campaign, different type of communication, different type of access to information and everything. It has created this sort of a debate. Perhaps 30 years ago, I don't think there used to be discussions like this at civil society level. Maybe very, very selective intellectuals, because there used to be a hegemony over knowledge also with very few. Today, it can be. You say something, an individual sitting in the audience can go to Google and re-verify. I think that's the age we have come in. So there is more discussion that's coming in. So I see that the mistake that's done with not having a continuity is the one which is giving an apprehension here, which has to be a simple formula. We're not debating about when the number of seats are going to rise based on the population for the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribe. We see that one as a continuation that has to happen from the social justice perspective. But when it's population, there seems to be this thought coming in that some states deliberately produce more children. There seems like some of these states did not actually do enough. Now, how you can perhaps encourage people not to have children, but in a democracy, you cannot stop them. Somebody tried that some time ago, right? Somebody forcefully tried that one. Even to have children, it's democracy. So how do I stop some states saying that, oh, no, you're not done enough, you have not stopped people to produce children? So there's an assumption that some of these states are eating, they're utilizing the funds, and then they're producing children. Now they have greater number, and that's indirectly in proportion is a punishment to the states that have performed well, or perhaps had greater civic responsibility in terms of reducing the population to the country. So that's my submission here, that the continuity and change to make a constitution a living document has somewhere had its own hit, because of which suddenly there seems to be a hiccup that has come when the word delimitation has come into the public discourse. Thank you.
Interesting, Doctor. You raised this very interesting point that there should have been continuity. It should have happened in 71. Now, we have seen that while we say the Constitution is a living document and it needs to be evolving continuously, and which is seen through more than 100 plus amendments, we also see that political exigencies and opportunism sometimes makes us quote the founding fathers to reinforce a particular point, say this is how it should be. It's very selectively quoted. So in this context, I would like to ask the panel your views on what are the legally tenable constitutional and statutory limits that can guide the Delimitation Commission's decisions. Mr. Alok.
So I think, and I'd urge everyone here to please do read my colleagues at Vidhi. They've written this report on states in parliament, which looks at what are the potential viable solutions within the constitutional and legal framework. Personally, I have also written a piece for EPW a few months ago, where I think the solution that I personally favor, and which is a mix of a lot of these concerns that we have reiterated, is do delimitation on the basis of the electorate. You're not denying anybody a vote. You're not saying a vote doesn't count. But this way, you account for the fact that there have been differential population growth, that some areas have seen more, say, people get older, live longer. See, this is what we are forgetting. We're just assuming population means babies, but we are forgetting that population is also because people are living much longer. So in that way, people who are sort of living longer, they still get to influence all of this. And finally, it does not do violence to any principle in the Constitution. This is my biggest reason to favor this. You can sort of still ensure that there is, as far as possible, there is representation to the population, but you will ensure that the drop is not dramatic. And again, I go back to this point. Let's not make it about mathematics. Let's not make it about arithmetic. Because tomorrow that arithmetic logic can be turned on its head. Somebody will choose a number, somebody will choose a data point, somebody will choose a data set, which today might work for one state, tomorrow that same state will suffer because of it. And finally, I like the discourse to stop using the term punish. People vote, states don't vote. States don't choose MPs. It's individuals who choose MPs. It's not as if the state is going around calling people and saying, have you had children or not have had children? People are making these decisions themselves. And when we sort of say a state is being punished, we are conflating the people and the government. That's a very dangerous thing to do. Because in some senses, it again goes against this fundamental constitutional ideal that people, that individuals have dignity of their own and should be recognized for that. So to that extent, I think it matters how we talk about it. Because as the moment we keep framing it as punishment, the moment we keep framing it as reward, democracy is not a reward. Democracy, the right to vote, comes from your fundamental dignity as an individual. The Constitution recognizes that. So when we stop speaking in these terms, we will more likely find an acceptable solution rather than getting caught in the punishment, reward, punishment, democracy this, democracy that. I think this, what I proposed, and which was proposed by authors Durai Rajan and his co-author in the EPW, they show by the numbers how it will lead to reallocation. Tamil Nadu may get a fewer seats, but what it will not do is fundamentally drop the representation so deep that it's a shock. I think the point that Dr. Nandakishore made is very valid. The mistake was 1976. 1981, it should have happened. Because if it had happened steadily, it would have allowed for a gradual realignment rather than a shock, right? It's a, to use my own example, if I'd spent a lot of years actually working out, I won't have to get shocked by the doctor's bill when I go to the, for a checkup. Like, that is what we're facing. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't do anything, that we should deny that there is something wrong. We should find a way to get back on track. And I think a way where we allocate seats based on the number of electors, essentially people aged 18 and above, is, I think, an acceptable solution.
I basically disagree with both panelists on this. It's not just a South-North divide. Okay, if you don't like the word punish, penalize, etc., use the word losing out. That losing out for doing well by the people, Don't forget, it's not just GDP and so on. We are talking about education, we are talking about health, we are talking about access to basic needs. And the state provides us, the midday meal scheme, for example, to start, and all that's come after that. So, and I'll also use the word states. Individuals, of course, but individuals don't, states are real. It's not fiction. Political parties rule states. In this state, it's been basically one or the other party from 1967, either the DMK or the AIDMK after the split. And therefore, it is meaningful to talk about states. Yes, states don't vote in toto, but states matter in the Lok Sabha, the way states vote. So I think the demand made by the elected representatives as well as those in opposition in particular states, take Kerala, for example, or Tamil Nadu, or Telangana, or even Andhra Pradesh possibly, will matter. And it's not just the South. It applies to other states, Punjab, Orissa, and so on. The principle is important. These two are clearly in conflict. I would use the word versus, yes, deliberately. These two are clearly in conflict. What the constitutional provision says in a literal reading, what it requires. And as for continuity, don't forget, maybe the communication, the media ecosystem, the communication ecosystem has changed, has been transformed in a revolutionary way. Yes, I concede that. But there has been a continuity of decisions on delimitation. 1976, 2001. 1976 for another reason, when we are under a dictatorship. But in 2001, why did Prime Minister Vajpayee and his government decide? Yes, he was in a coalition. There were competing demands. There had been trouble on this. So the continuity is with that reading of the Constitution. And you and Vinod used the word political pragmatism. I think that's very relevant here. So it was a statesmanly decision made. Maybe he felt he had no choice. He could have pushed it through, possibly. But I think it was a far-sighted decision. And the continuity is with not doing what the Constitution requires you literally to do, and use the caveat as far as practicable in a sagacious way, so that you keep people united, largely united on this issue. Who's demanding that one vote, one value means I must represent, my representative must be for fewer people? Who thinks like that? Which individual thinks like that? It comes from politics. It comes from ideology. It comes from large numbers of politicians in a state demanding it, or region. So I think I completely disagree with this idea that continuity here means, do what is required by the constitutional provision with and don't use the caveat. Anyway, I'm not a lawyer, but I think I certainly have followed politics, and it is a recipe for trouble if you're going to go through with it. The government has not shown its hand, and let's see how statesmanly or sagacious they will be.
Thank you. On a lighter note, I was mentally prepared to be said that we don't agree. That was expected from him, being a journalist. Nevertheless, invariably, if you observed the previous discussion in the previous panel, it came back and forth to devolution. It came back and forth to finances. And though it starts off with the number of member of parliament, that doesn't rise the finances for the respective states in the federal structure. Now, what is interesting here is, so if finance is a concern, if performance is a concern, if let's say your effort to make sure that the population has been kept under check is a concern, or if you have anything else, actually there are better formulations rather than fighting over losing the number of seats, which has to be happening based on what has been given as some sort of formula. Now, one of the formula that is available is Gadgil-Mukherjee formula. it's working. So the Guard-Gill this thing came in with the early part of the Planning Commission, and then subsequently that was essentially to look at important components such as, let's say, literacy, health indices, and also welfare coverage. Then it was thought in 1991 when Pranab Mukherjee was there that few more things have to be also brought in. That includes the performance incentive that was also practiced along with, let's say, the budget allocations that were done based on the population. Apart from that, we also had service level benchmarks and many other things. I happened to work then with the Minister of Urban Development and Housing and Poverty Alleviation. We used to have this special incentive that was given to states whenever they perform for these type of things. Now, using Guard-Gill Mukherjee formula, they speak about and say that the criterias and the weightage, if you look in, population according to the census would be 60%, per capita income would be 25%, performance, that is tax effort and the fiscal management, would be 7.5%, and then the special problem that includes the natural disaster, insurgency, and many other things, which was brought out very clearly by the public representative in the previous session, would cover and take care of the 100% here. So what I see is that though the thought is on the number of seats that are going to be reduced in the House of Representatives, or what we call as the Lok Sabha, but what I see at the end of the day, it's boiling down to is my finances, the amount of money that I'm contributing to, and in returns what I'm getting to. So I think on a positive note, rather than touching that part, again, it's all very early for us to, because so far nothing has been spoken over, because a lot of them are apprehensions and assumptions as well. So I see this is one way of looking at that. The possibility is that let the process happen, but you take care of it's something else, and you take care of, because that's the money that you are in requirement of. That's exactly what you're asking, and you're saying you've been punished, or the terminology punished is being used for your performance, and that performance is not how many member of parliaments you have produced, rather than about the money that you have generated and what in return you are getting. So from a positive perspective, I see this as a possibility. That's Guard-Gill Mukherjee as a formula is a possibility.
Very interesting perspectives. Alok was of the opinion that we should follow the constitutional mandate, go in for delimitation. Mr. Enram said there must be continuity. So my question is, are there any legal challenges if the government decides not to do anything and the 2026 deadline passes? Then we will have, instead of the 71 census, the 2011 census which was last published. So will that create any legal challenges?
Two big ones. One is women's reservation. I think actually it won't be so much of a challenge. If you are doing a delimitation exercise, you can still do the women's reservation. That's not a problem. The one challenge is, I think, something which Mr. Ram also flagged, which is the representation of scheduled castes and scheduled tribes in the Lok Sabha. Because Tamil Nadu has a certain percentage of scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. The population is much greater in UP and Bihar. If you are reducing or rather, if the disproportionately less representation is there for people from UP and Bihar, likewise, the proportion of scheduled castes and scheduled tribes represented in parliament reduces. This is a point, if you recall, 2 discussions ago I had mentioned. This will be a challenge because I cannot see it's still using a data point which is 15 years old. By the time of the next census, maybe 30 years old. So we will just keep kicking the can. And I think, to me, the real challenge of this exercise is that it's not taking into account a certain change in India's reality. And I'll bring that reality here, which is, for a long time, people around the world used to wonder, why don't Indians move? Indians were by far the most likeliest of people to live, to be born somewhere, work there, and die there. Migration within the country, and we think it's large because we hear the stories, but the actual numbers, check in the 2011 census also, migration within the country was a tiny percentage of the population. That is changing now. That is changing now. We don't have the numbers because there was no census, no projections. But we know we have lived through a reality. We saw the people walking on the streets during COVID. We saw how our cities emptied up. Last panel also somebody mentioned how Tamil Nadu's industrial hubs depend on labor coming from Jharkhand, Orissa, and Bihar. We know that migration is a reality. And that migration is a reality because of the enormous differences in wealth. Number was given in the previous session, but economists have framed it in a slightly different way. They call it the 333 problem. I call it the 533 problem, or the 335 problem. India's three richest states are now 5 times as richer as India's three poorest states. That means the average person living in a Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, or Gujarat is almost 5 times richer than the average person living in Uttar Pradesh or Bihar. Uttar Pradesh's numbers, I think, get a little inflated thanks to the NCR region. Ghaziabad and Noida and Greater Noida are huge economic hubs. If you see within Uttar Pradesh, the average person in Noida is nearly 20 times richer than the average person living in Eastern UP. We have to acknowledge this massive gulf inequality. And that is going to have an effect because if we reinforce the current, and I say this with all seriousness, there is a political inequality today. If we reinforce political inequality and say we are not going to reflect it, there is going to be a massive shift in population. People are going to say that, look, the numbers sound huge when you look at it on the budget document. But per capita, Tamil Nadu spends maybe 2 or 3 times more than Uttar Pradesh on each person in Tamil Nadu, right? They're going to be, I don't have education, I don't have jobs, I don't have healthcare. I can move freely within the country because that's my fundamental right. Are we willing to deal with the consequences of the massive social rupture that can take place? Look, legal constitution is all solutions to a problem. You should not create a new problem using the law and the constitution. And that is the bigger worry for me. To me, the constitution is a framework for finding solution, not to say we'll avoid seeing the reality.
Do you have any thoughts on that, sir?
Sir, I want to ask you, is it justiciable?
Yeah, I think, see, yeah, and this is my point, that we don't give politicians enough credit sometimes to find solutions to problems. We shouldn't look to courts. I say this in a law firm sitting with lawyers. This is a solution which needs the politicians to be serious about what they're talking about, what they're facing, and find a solution within the constitutional framework, find a solution within the legal framework, which says, yes, we know this change is coming. Yes, this change has to be addressed. We have to ensure that economic inequality is not going to be reinforced by political inequality, and that the security and the internal security of the country is not fundamentally ruptured. I think that is how we need to think about it.
Can we discuss political inequality? What does it mean?
Okay, just before I come to political inequality, 2011 is a little difficult because Tamil Nadu's population in 11 was 72.15 million. By 24, it is 83.70. Whereas with regard to Uttar Pradesh, in 2011, it was 199.81. Now it's 244.0. So there's huge disparity, as he mentions, that the aspirations of the people will go, what is it, or it will be underrepresented. And I think that aspiration, you cannot stop it. I think with the availability of public interest litigations and many other components that are available, I think there will be legal challenges as well, because people will make it an issue saying that what constraints, because the government cannot say just not to rupture anybody. I would want to just go with the numbers that are existing, make everyone happy, let Tamil Nadu be happy, let Kerala be happy, let Maharashtra also be happy, let Uttar Pradesh also be happy. We will also postpone this by unprecedentedly, maybe let's say another 30 years, so that everybody is happy. Now, perhaps that position can be taken, but I think somebody will question that what are the constraints actually the union government is facing, that it's not actually going for the delimitation. Then the government is bound to answer. And then public representatives, because education is two-way. I also agree with the point that I think we are not investing enough in the intelligence of our lawmakers. I think somewhere we have left partially that to the court of law. And then we have also left it to few experts. I think our public policy makers are quite educated and they have a sense of what it has to be. They can collectively come up with something. I think we are not putting or investing enough, because Constitution is a guiding book, but you need not actually go by. So we have done a number of things with regard to that. Let's look at the LGBTQ, right? There's no mention of that in the Constitution, but we have made sure that we have made amendments, we have made provisions for that, and this state itself has gone one step ahead, and few days ago recruited a transgender as a faculty in one of the colleges. So I think the guiding light is the Constitution, but I think it should not constrain us to go forward. I think then we will perhaps take this forward. I think that
what I mean by political inequality, if the value of one vote in Tamil Nadu today is 1, per the 2011 census, and the numbers may change, the value of a vote in Bihar was 0.7. Now, that value has been falling. It's not, a day is not very far when the value of a vote in Bihar is 0.5. That fundamentally, I mean, I can accept a 0.9, a 1.1, the constitution, and that is where the point about as far as practicable happens. I'll give you an example from Bangalore, and I'm sure it's true in Chennai also. Rajarajeshwari Nagara, which is a constituency on the edge of Bangalore, in 2008, when they did the delimitation, had 2 lakh voters. Today, it has 6.5 lakh voters. In central Bangalore, constituency of no, I'm talking about assembly constituencies. Assembly constituencies, Jayanagar had about 2 lakh voters. Now it has about 1.7. You are getting within one city, right? I'm giving you a micro level of the problem. This is happening nationwide. Also, within one city, if you live in, and Jayanagar is a very nice part of the town, let me be very honest, your vote is 4 times the weight of somebody living in Rajarajeshwari Nagara. And this has happened because of migration. No one's pushing anyone out. This is not birth rates. This is not population planning, nothing. This is simply a reality we are refusing to acknowledge, that in Bangalore, the population has changed so dramatically, the dynamics have changed so dramatically, that we are continuing to use outdated numbers to allocate political power. And that has created its own perverse situation where we are unable to vote out MLAs in Bangalore. I'm sorry, that's the unfortunate truth. Irrespective of parties, Bangalore MLAs always win. And where the rest of the state sees this churn in political parties, we in Bangalore are stuck. So in some ways, this is the reality that I'm coming from, that there is a unhappy status quo that today is going to get worse and worse if we try and avoid this difficult but necessary discussion.
Yeah, I don't get this, the meaning of value of a vote. And when Dr. Ambedkar clearly didn't mean that in terms of the value goes down because you represent fewer people or more people, goes up because you represent, if you represent more people, it goes down. If you represent fewer people, it goes up. For me, it is not a very relevant indicator of this. That has to be reinterpreted in terms. What it means is everyone is equal. And he said it also in another context when he talked about in society, in socio-economic life, we don't have that. Of course, we're not discussing Dr. Ambedkar's statement here, but that's often used. I agree with Dr. Nandakishore that this it's a guiding document. So try to interpret it for the best of your country or society, your people. So we don't have to, it's not a big deal saying that the value interpreted in this sense has to be more or less the same across the country. I think underlying all this was the hope that inequalities would come down, regional inequalities, differences among states in every respect. It has not happened. In the United States, I read, I think they have not increased the number of seats in the House of Representatives after 1913. But some adjustments have taken place. States have not lost very much, which means, there's largely congruence among those states. But we are a developing society where these inequalities, convergence is not happening across the country, across regions, which is why they speak about the north-south divide. So I think a good solution would be to have a good discussion with the parties and keep the existing ratio for now, and not bother about how, the value of your vote goes down. Then you have to go into every constituency and look at that within a state. It's a waste of time and resources to get hung up on this aspect of the exercise. Delimitation can take place. You've got to address the issue of scheduled caste, scheduled tribes in the interest of social justice, which is a constitutional value. But otherwise, take the larger interest of Indian politics, the Indian nation into account, and try to avoid trouble over this issue. That's my hope. That's what many of us share. I'm sure our panelists are the same thing. We have different prescriptions. But don't let this cloud people's choice over the next several years, whether it's assembly elections or the next Lok Sabha election, and so on. Somebody mentioned the Rajya Sabha. States don't have equal representation in the Rajya Sabha. That's the US Senate. I think they got mixed up in the last panel session, whoever mentioned it.
I think they were proposing it as a solution. The Carnegie paper, which was referred to, they were proposing an equal representation in the Rajya Sabha as a potential solution to ensure no state feels left out in the Lok Sabha. But quite honestly, I thought about it. I initially liked the idea, but it cannot work because we have a parliamentary system of government where the Prime Minister is elected by the Lok Sabha. In the US, it works for both houses to be equal because the president is elected completely differently. It doesn't matter if they have a majority in the one house or the other. But we'll create a new problem completely with the idea of money bills.
Senators are directly elected.
And senators, of course, are directly elected. So I like the appeal of the idea that if we just equalize states in the Rajya Sabha, we'll solve the problem. But I think there are about 4 or 5 new problems which crop up, which requires a very fundamental retooling of our idea of parliamentary democracy, which I'm not so sure states are ready for.
I think it's true with that idea of making equal number. If you look at the United States Constitution itself, the revenue bills are always generated in the lower house itself. It can only suggest amendments in the Senate. That's the case. That's the case even with the initiation to impeachment has to happen in the lower house only. Then the Senate can take forward and impeach. So it's not going to make a big difference when it comes to these issues. And also the things are very common there here, except the election mode and many other things that are associated with, and also some other vested parts. But what I also see is that just for a spin, how would the people in the northern part of the country would be debating delimitation? If you look in, that would be a very interesting way to assess something, because this matters to us. That's why we're discussing here. But we can also look at from their perspective and what they would be thinking of the very idea of the growth, very idea of that we are contributing to GDP, the very idea of saying that we have got money. I'm 100% sure they will also be telling if a particular state has shown this percentage of growth with having, let's say, raw materials such as iron, from where did the iron come? From where did the coal come? That would be very interesting, because there is a very interesting data that's associated with freight equalization scheme between 1952 to 1992. If you look in, it will spin other way around. I think it will be very interesting discussion as well. I'll stop it here.
Very interesting. I was going to bring that up, but before we come to freight equalization policy, we did speak about the value of a vote. 1:1, 1:0.4, 0.5. Is it relevant, not relevant, things like that. And so there was also a suggestion on the panel that we should let status quo continue or proportionately increase it and leave it there. I would like to bring to the attention of the panel that we have Article 330, which deals with the reservation for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. And the founding fathers, in their wisdom, said that we should have this reservation for up to 50 years from 1950. So it would come to an end by 2020. Then we had it further extended, and now it is up to 2030.
Now it is for eternity. Nobody will dare take it away.
There is a new development recently where they said that the census will also now enumerate the caste. So there will also be a caste census. We already have a 10% reservation for economically weaker section. Supreme Court said that 50% reservation is the upper limit. This 10% does not come within that, so we have approximately 60% reservation.
Tamil Nadu has a higher.
Tamil Nadu
So it's
historically
allowed.
has had 69%. And now there are demands in states, some states, to have reservation for minorities. So when we are looking at the caste census and we are looking at reservation demands for for other backward classes, most backward classes and things like that, we already have a 60% all India limit, we have a 69% state limit. How far can these reservations legally go? How will delimitation impact this whole concept? Your thoughts?
So more than delimitation, I think a caste census. So I literally wrote about this last month. What it might do is redefine our idea of socially and educationally backward classes. I'll again make a reference a little bit to Karnataka's history. We've all read the S.R. Bommai versus Union of India judgment, landmark judgment, which upheld it sort of limited the powers of the governor. But what was the context for that case? The context for that case was actually an attempt by the Karnataka government to rationalize reservations. They set up the Justice Venkataswamy Commission, which said that the two most dominant castes in the state, the Vokkaligas and the Lingayats, are no longer socially and educationally backward. They should not be eligible for reservations. Unfortunately, this also meant that no government was willing to accept this. They said, we are too dependent on the support from these communities. We cannot accept these recommendations. This is, and again, on various grounds. The report is fairly robust and on various grounds. Now we are seeing the counter happen, where a Maratha community or a Jat community comes to the court says, nope, you're not entitled to reservation. Could the data from the caste census make the government revisit the list, whether at the union level or at the state level? Or if the government doesn't do it, could the court revisit that list? There is a very fundamental change which is coming if the caste census is brought up. I think the second change which might come in is we might see a demand for inter-se reservations among SC and ST communities, because what the Supreme Court has held, and this is also what I wrote about, Supreme Court has held in that Janel Singh case, that it's not, the list is of course centrally created, but who gets benefit to what extent is up to the state to decide and the center to decide, based on rational criteria and so on. We know that this, in the census, collects subcaste data. What it doesn't collect is data as to which subcastes have done better than others, more represented and less represented. We might see, again, this is speculation looking into the future, that what has happened in the context of jobs and education, we might see a demand coming up saying that politically numerous caste, and I'll give an example from a neighboring state, which is Andhra Pradesh. The Madega community always say that we don't get the benefit of reservation because we are too, within scheduled castes, very backward. They might say even political reservations, which so far nobody has ever made a demand. They might say we are numerous and we don't get representation, so even the reservations within SC and ST, there should be further reservations. So I foresee that there could be these are the impacts that I could foresee on reservation. But the last point I'll end with and leave is this. Political reservations, the numbers are more or less fixed. We know up 100, down, might go somewhere across the country. The real issue is state governments are not recruiting people anymore. Recruitments have fallen off. states are not starting new universities. Maybe a fight over reservations is a fight over a very rapidly shrinking pie. If the ultimate goal is social justice, and it's always been social justice, reservation is one tool, it may prompt a rethink on whether reservations are enough for social justice. So I'll leave it at that thought.
Would you like to speak anything about? Please go ahead.
Yeah, I think what I thought was that it will further create greater amount of burden on the states also. See, one of the common factor, whether we agree or not, all said and done, as much we criticize people in the public sector or the government sector, at the end of the day, people want a job in the government sector. That means the expectation from the respective state governments is very high in terms of creation of jobs. Now, is the state capable of doing that one, or would it actually do that one is also a question. Because if we take the data across the country, I think Orissa is the only state where regularly teachers' appointments have happened at all levels. No other state has followed this one. Most of the progressive states have not been able to follow this one because of various reasons. It might be because they've gone ahead and up till the recruitment, or they've had entrance exams or a competitive exam, but somebody then moved the court of law on a particular issue and then they bought a stay. It might have been hundreds of issues. Whatever said and done, Orissa is the only state perhaps that has regularly done, and they've taken care of that part. Now, when this is going to be a burden on the states also have to think about that. Will it stop at the level of education, right? We I think from the social benefit perspective, from the education perspective, from many other perspectives. Now, that's where I see that there is this new, let's say, demand or a new dialogue that's coming up asking for reservations in the private sector as well, in the IT sector to everything. Now, I think that's the spillover effect that I see that's going to happen, and it will also create some sort of a rupture, and it will certainly disturb. So I think this whole idea of whether we want or not, at the end of the day, though it is meant for social benefit, will create political ruptures as well. That's my take.
What is the question?
The question is, Article 330 speaks about reservation for scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. Reservations were supposed to come to an end in 2020. It is now pushed to 2030. Alok said it's now almost permanent. Or rather, I think you, sir, said it was almost permanent. Now we are speaking about caste census coming in the next census. We already have 50% cap by the Supreme Court on all reservation. 10% reservation for economically weaker section is outside the purview of this 50%. And now with the caste reservation coming in, caste census coming in, will there be more reservations? The women's reservation is linked to the delimitation. So how do you see this panning out, sir?
So far as reservation policies are concerned, and an experience, Tamil Nadu, I think, is the state that should be studied deeply. And there's some data showing that it is this that has built up the foundation for growth, takeoff, and so on. That caste inequalities were reduced, and they even opened up opportunities for entrepreneurs and so on. This book called The Dravidian Model presents data on that, whether you fully agree with their findings or not. There's a lot of data there. So Tamil Nadu has done very well in reducing caste inequalities so far as the backward, what are called designated the backward classes are concerned. It is arguable whether it has done very well so far as scheduled castes and scheduled tribes are concerned. In fact, probably not. There are divides. The past, at least, there have been clashes and so on. I think the same benefits have not gone to the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. And of course, the reservation is going to continue. I think very few people are going to have any doubts about it for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. But whether there's more space for accommodating new sections which may figure in the caste census. I don't know. I don't know how they study socio-economic, backwardness. The Constitution uses the word socio-economic, socially, economically backward classes, and socially and educationally backward classes, which is why under Chief Minister Karunanidhi, I think, introduced this most backward within the backward. So I think there's a lot to be studied here. But separately, in any kind of delimitation exercise, you have to take that, you cannot avoid that issue. The representation for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes in the Lok Sabha and also in state assemblies. I think you have to, that is certainly going to increase. There'll be a demand. I think and it'll be quite just that it does it.
It is built into the constitution. It says 330 and 333.
An increase in
proportionate increase. And I'm given to understand that over the years it has increased so therefore they will, after delimitation, they will have proportionate increase as well. There are many topics, but I will now end it with one last topic because we are running out of time. And that is to do with the freight equalization scheme, which Professor Nanda Kumar brought out. Nanda Koshor. For many of us, many of the younger generation in the last 30 years, especially, you may not know, but there was a policy between 1952 and 1992 called the freight equalization policy, where raw material from the resource-rich states like Bihar, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, those areas could be available to the southern states, which are far, far away from those production centers, at the same price at which it is available locally.
Which means a huge subsidy.
Which means the southern states for 40 years were hugely subsidized. And that gave rise to initial economic development, which then snowballed into more development, more educational institutions, more industries, more IT parks, and so on. So when we speak about delimitation, a very frequently put forth argument is the southern states are being punished for population control. And in that context, the southern states did get an artificial cost advantage of setting up industries from raw materials which are far away. And so in that context, we also in the earlier session, we spoke about the 15th Pay Commission and how they are giving high weightage to low per capita income states to lift up the poor states. So in this context, what, in your opinion, the question is, what are the safeguards that exist within the Constitution to ensure that smaller or socio-economically advanced states are not politically sidelined? Alok, would you like to?
I think we should not minimize the powers already given in the Constitution to states. A state like, a really small state like Nagaland, which is heavily dependent on transfers by the union, can make laws on as many subjects as Kerala or Tamil Nadu, which are a lot more independent in their fiscal space. Those protections exist. And I think the GST, the council, is a very interesting constitutional innovation, where for the first time, the state and the center are sitting together to make tax policy, unthought of. And it's a good measure. I do have some problems with some of the specific constitutional provisions, but we leave that aside for the moment. It's a question that fundamentally to me comes from an imagination of what federalism should be. I think in our imagination of federalism, we are still okay with, they decided like this in 1950, so it's perfectly fine. If you actually think about it, a lot of the innovations in federalism that have taken place have been a result of politics. It has been the result of regionalist parties saying, we want more power, we want it to be exercised this way, we want it to be done this way, and that's right. I think we should push this conversation forward, and I was thinking about it when it was being discussed in the previous panel. Why can't we rewrite the lists? let's take a lot of subjects out of list 1 and give it to the states in list 2. Let's take more subjects out of list 3 and put it in list 2. And let's also give more powers to local government. And I think the problem was being mentioned by the MLA from Thousand Lights. The reason why people expect their MPs to fix their drains is because there is no councillor most of the time. If I'm not mistaken, Chennai went without elections for about 6 years, no local body elections. It has now been 4 years since Bangalore has had an elected set of councillors and corporators. Who will we go to? We'll go to our MLA. The MLA is busy, we go to the MP. We're being forced to this. No one likes to stand in a long queue outside the MLA's house who's dealing with thousands of other problems. I'd rather go to my corporator, my ward member who's practically next door. This is a problem which has been created, I think, unfortunately, because states have not taken the 73rd and 74th Amendment seriously. States cannot say more autonomy, more autonomy, more autonomy on one hand and deny the same autonomy to local self-government. Because local self-government is what fixes all our problems on a day-to-day basis. So if we are serious about saying more autonomy, more power, set the example. Say that we will ensure no matter what happens, elections will take place to every Zilla Panchayat, every urban local body every 5 years. They will be empowered to solve every single problem in your day-to-day life. They will have tax raising capacity. They will not be dependent on the state government for handouts. And they will actually function like a government.
Kerala does that.
Exactly. I was just going to come to that. Kerala is a fantastic model for that. And I think it reflects in Kerala's improvement overall because people know my ward member will solve my problem, right? So I think this is where, you should push this part of the conversation forward, not just say that let's just defend whatever powers have been given in the constitution because it's the best. It's not the best possible arrangement of powers. Why shouldn't the states levy income, levy and collect income tax? Why should it have to be devolved? Let it go up. Let states collect and give a share to the union. Why not? I think we have to be bold about this imagination. And I think we need to re-envision what we see as the structure of government in India, not just make it about center-state relations.
I think the first thing to be taken off union list is education. I mean, the concurrent list is education.
Professor Thakur, we are having a lot of inputs for our white paper, which you proposed. Before I open the question and answer session, would you like to say anything, Professor?
Yeah.
Chatham House rules or no?
On the particular issue that was raised on the subsidies to many other things, it actually incentivized some of those states in the northern states to have mines and other things for a very long time. So we have taken advantage of having, let's say, major R&D and defense infrastructure, includes ISRO, HAL, DRDO, you name one. We have had nuclear installations in Kalpakkam, we have had R&D in Hyderabad. Apart from that, we also have had some of the, absolutely, like let's say the union supported policies between 1990 to 2000 prioritized Hyderabad, Bangalore and Chennai for ACCs and IT corridor development. Now these are the ones which became magnets for FDI, talent and export-linked industries as well. Now these are all very, very important components that come in. Now the question is also that how do we make our, let's say, public representatives more represented? That's the question. Because we started off when Sukumar Sen was the first election commissioner. Prime Minister was anxious, actually. He wanted to have election because he wanted validation, because he was running a government without an election. So he wanted public acceptance and he wanted validation. But he had spine, Sukumar Sen, to just walk up to the Prime Minister and say that I cannot have an election where the women's name is mentioned as wife of so-and-so or daughter of so-and-so. So I will take time, sir, but I will get this done. So India is run based on institution, even from a democratic perspective. If you look of the South Asian states, which plus or minus have taken in less than a decade or so from when we have had our independence, India is able to do something, may not be as desired, but I think we are decent enough and we are going ahead with that one because of the institutions that we have built. I think building institutions is important, like procedures are also important, but procedures cannot be based on, let's say, selective amnesia. It has to be equally, applicable to all levels. So it has to be that the states cannot decide. That point also came in the previous, session, that the states have also played their own role when they have called for early elections. You cannot blame it that only the misuse of a particular article has led to the disruption of the elections at the state level. The states have done this one. For example, the state of Andhra Pradesh, there was an artificially created crisis at Alipiri, and then an early election was called. Now, who's responsible for this one? Who pays for it? You were elected to complete a term. So don't the public representative have the responsibility to the public? I think this is where the public education has to come in. Antonio Gramsci, one of the famous neo-Marxists, says that in a society, I may cook every now and then an egg or something else. That doesn't make me a chef. So that means we have decided that in a society that not all of us will be directly responsible and be there to take care of the policy process. That's why we have public representatives. We have elected them to go and do something for us. And I think there is greater responsibility of them that they cannot shy away. So that has to be strengthened at the civic level. And then perhaps the discourse will change in this country. That's my take. Thank you.
I just want on Sukumar Sen's, I think he did a fantastic job. There's a literature on it. But unfortunately, 2.8 million women who would not give their own names, but would say wife of so-and-so or daughter of so-and-so, were missed out. And I think Sukumar Sen or the system could have used more imagination to solve that problem. And then you had the problem of missing women voters after that in a number of elections. But hats off to Sukumar Sen, the hero. But I think in this case, slight disagreement there. I think he exercises independence for the wrong reason, brought about a wrong outcome, because 2.8 million women who are clearly citizens out of the 80 million eligible voters, because I've looked into this, I've written on this, missed out. Whereas a more imaginative solution could be found. You could verify that person is actually there. Just because you didn't get the name, you are barred from voting. Arguable.
Yes, the democracy is run by its institutions. We've had a wonderful session. I would like to the audience to take this opportunity to ask a few questions, to get insightful answers. Restrict yourself to questions, not observations or comments. We are running out of time. Legal and constitutional dimensions of delimitation, on those lines.
No, don't expect questions. There will always be opinions on this issue.
Hi, thank you. So both the panels sort of hinted towards the fact that there could be more solutions to not just whatever problem that may be created because of delimitation exercise. There are better ways to address the problem than just stopping the exercise, right? And Mr. Ram sort of mentioned that, I don't know which individual thinks that one person means one vote, right? Our constitution makers definitely thought so, and it is there in the constitution, because of that, the principle arises. But he did not I just would like him to mention what does he think one person, one vote means? And because when the delimitation exercise was freezed, and when the freeze was continued, those exercises were also political. It's not that they were not a political decision. And whatever happens, whether you not go ahead with the exercise or whether you do it, it will have a political element in it, right? And the solution is not to avoid the problem, but to address it, right? So I'm just thinking on that point, right? When Mr. Ram says that I don't know what one person, one vote means. I did not get a clear answer on what he thinks it means. He did sort of circle around that code, but did not clearly sort of give a clear idea as to what does that mean, if not what others have been saying. That's all.
You want me to respond to that? Please ask the question. Yeah. No, I think who thinks in terms of how many people does my MLA or MP represent? Who thinks like that? And who feels diminished because of the vote value is less, that my vote is valued less than the vote of somebody in, is valued more if you're in Tamil Nadu than in somebody in Bihar and so on. But who thinks like that? Isn't that an artificial construct? Or if you don't want to use the artificial, isn't that a construct on another level? Who thinks like that? Who feels dissatisfied or outraged in Uttar Pradesh or Bihar that in Tamil Nadu, his vote value is higher than my vote value here? What does vote value mean? It's an artificial, or it is a construct at another level, that there are so many representatives for this size of population, and it's very uneven across the country. Only politicians think like that.
I just very quickly add to that. People may not think it, but they're acting on it. And when I say acting on it, if you actually look at the turnout of every constituency across this country and map it for the last few years, it's almost a very neat correlation between size of constituency and turnout. Rural Bihar has the same turnout as urban Bangalore or Chennai. So it's not as if this is the myth that I want to bust. It's not that people in urban areas are disengaged from politics. In fact, a lot of people do want to vote. They would like to vote. What is putting them off is that no party is making an effort to reach out to them. It's the same process which is happening in rural Bihar. You will see 48, 49, 50, 54, 55% in Lok Sabha elections, right? In assembly, it's slightly different because that was delimitation was done on a different basis for that. But if you actually see, the larger the constituency, the lower the turnout. Which means what? Which means the politician is thinking at some level, their votes don't matter. And that person is feeling if the politician doesn't want to come and make an effort to get my vote, for me, voting is a cost. If you're a person, you have to take a day off. It may be a... If it is a effort, it's an effort to go and get that vote done. So you need to see what am I getting for this, and devalued because constituency is so big, your vote actually doesn't matter. So this is something which unfortunately isn't as well studied, but a basic correlation will show larger the constituency size, less the turnout.
The other aspect is urban, rural. Right across India, the value of a vote, to borrow that construct for a minute, is much higher for a rural voter than it is for an urban voter. Huge difference in this. Even though the majority of people live in the countryside, there's some states are, getting closer to 50%, Tamil Nadu, for example. But so the rural voter has a huge advantage. Are you going to get aggrieved over that? If you use this indicator, value of a vote, who thinks like that? But what he said is relevant. I haven't thought about it. Turnout.
Good evening, esteemed panelists. I'm Ashwath Dinakaran, a penultimate year student at School of Excellence in Law. I guess we've already discussed Article 330 and Article 333, but as a law student, I can't help but focus on Article 329A, which specifically restricts courts or bars interference of courts when it comes to delimitation commission's orders.
That's what I was asking, justiciability.
Exactly. To add to that, I guess the Supreme Court has already clarified its position quite a long ago on Meghraj Kothari. But however, in the recent times, Justice Surya Kant's division bench interpreted Meghraj Kothari in a way that indeed delimitation commission's orders are subjected to judicial review if it's manifestly arbitrary. So I'd appreciate the panel's view on where do you think judicial review should stand when it comes to delimitation commission's orders.
Can I just use that mic because this is sorry. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. There are two ways to look at it. One is Justice Surya Kant is so far out of the mainstream judicial view on this that it was a passing observation. I know which order you're referring to. To me, I read it as a passing observation. But I look at the history of the expansion of judicial review in this country. Initially, the court said our orders under Article 356 cannot be reviewed. They are now being reviewed. The court initially said money bills cannot be touched. Now they are on the verge of being touched and changed. We sort of have, in fact, even in the context of speaker's powers for disqualification, which was considered sacrosanct, now courts have said we will set aside if it is. So I personally feel it depends on how badly the Delimitation Commission does its job. Because we saw, even recently, yes, a lot of people are unhappy with the Jammu and Kashmir and Assam delimitation. Courts did not interfere. Because yes, there were controversial changes, admittedly, but the court didn't know what to do. It's not like the court can read, unlike in the US, where courts have the powers to redraw the boundaries themselves, Indian courts, A, no law gives them that power, and B, even if they gave that power, we have not evolved our procedure to be able to assist courts in redrawing boundaries. So I think if a delimitation commission does its job sufficiently badly, a court may be tempted to step in, but I see that as a very remote possibility. Because it is not, and it's not as if the constitution is making it non-justiciable. The subject matter itself is non-justiciable. How do I mean, as a judge, know where to draw the boundaries of Thousands Lakes constituency, which then MLA was from? I don't. Do I know, should it go to this ward? Should it include that ward? Should it include this part of Chennai? Should it not include that part of Chennai? But I do know if the sitting MLA is sitting and drawing the boundary and telling the Delimitation Commission, put it here, put it here, put it here, I should strike it down, right? So to that extent, it may be possible, but I think something with, it's basic malafide, it's basic bias. But it's not as if the court can say, we will now tell you how to draw, right? So I think it's possible, courts will slowly expand, but it will have to require the Delimitation Commission to doing such a bad job that the court in good conscience cannot say, please go ahead.
I think it will also reflect badly on the judiciary itself, because it will be headed by a former Supreme Court justice. So there ends the story.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening to the distinguished panelists. As a very lay person, as a citizen, there are two basic questions. First of all, I'd like to congratulate Dr. Vinod Surana to have organized such a forum of such distinguished panel. There's a lot of light as a lay person that I have gained, and knowledge that I've gained on this subject. But as a very lay person, as a citizen who would like to vote, there is one question that always bothers me, is does this exercise, or will this exercise really account for the huge migrating population? Will this address concerns of migrating population? As regards, say, caste or other regional preferences are concerned, if you look at most of the so-called backward states in North India, where most of the working population is already migrated, how relevant would those regional preferences be in terms of deciding what the equation for delimitation, or what the selection criteria for delimitation would be? Because if you look at Northeast and northern, most of the northern so-called backward states, most of the working population is actually not there. So how does it really work? Because as a lay citizen, I really don't know if a person from Northeast who works in Chennai, what would be the kind of engagement of that person in the regional politics in this state. Maybe the person is already working here for 15-20 years, and the person is using the services and the facilities provided by the state government. What would be the level of engagement of that person vis-a-vis what it would have been if he were in the original state where he came from? So how does a citizen understand this? Thank you.
The answer to both your questions is the same. And the same is like framing it in a slightly different way. Does the political system want to take migration into account? Mr. Ram mentioned Kerala. It's also a great example where the political system has incorporated migrants because it works at the ground level. So your local panchayat will know. And migration to Kerala has happened in an agricultural context. I forget exactly where I read this, but somebody pointed out how The songs that you hear when people are harvesting rice in Kerala are now very different, right? And it's not because somebody is forcibly poaching away. There are no workers available. The farmers are like, these are the people from Bihar are the only ones willing to work. But the government has ensured that, yes, we will admit your children to school. Yes, you will be able to access local facilities. Yes, your children will learn Malayalam. There is a story which always comes once every 2 years that the topper of Malayalam in the state board election is the daughter of a Bihari migrant who put his child into this school. And they looked after them during the pandemic, right? Yes. When the political system says migrants are important because they're fundamental to how our city, village, taluk, whatever runs, they will get engaged, they will be involved. But when you sort of see them just as disposable resources, which unfortunately is how a lot of our cities see them, they will not be engaged. They will also not respond. There's this, I call it a heartbreaking study, but it's a very, very rigorous academic study, which showed that if you send the same request as a voter from an area, let's say a Tamil speaker from Chennai, to an MLA or to a local municipal member, you send it as, say, a person with a visibly North Indian name who has been settled in Chennai for 15 years, or somebody with a visibly North Indian name settled in the last 4-5 years, the politician responds most to the first request and the least to the last request. And because the politician's logic is simple, I don't know if you will vote. I don't know if tomorrow I can count on you to be part of the party, the political system, and the process. But it's not an individual political choice. It is a larger choice being made by the political system, which says, how important are migrants to this place we are in? When you make that first choice, everything else follows.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, panelists, for those responses. They were very insightful.
She was getting nervous that there'd be more.
As we now draw this event to a close, on behalf of the organizing team of both Surana and Surana International Attorneys and Vinayaka Mission School of Economics and Public Policy, I extend a heartfelt thanks to all the panelists for the powerful and enlightening session. Thank you, audience, for your attentive listening and those insightful questions. I would also like to thank the admin staffs, IT staff, and the support staff for your seamless support and coordination. I now request everyone to please raise for the national